Hi. Oh no, it's alright. It's nice to
I
see
am
you.
like, you can see now my hair
Oh.
is so different. Oh, this is cute. Have you been here before?
No. Yeah, you usually try new places.
Uh huh.
How
How's
was
it
your?
going?
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'm just planning to go to a medicine festival later.
Medicine festival.
It's not. It's. I just like festivals sometimes. I haven't. It reminds me the most probably of Burning Man in terms of the vibes and.
Oh really?
Yeah.
What kind of festival is it?
It's probably just hippies.
What
I went last year.
What kind of music is it?
I don't know. I don't really go for the music.
No.
I just go to just talk to hippies.
Oh really?
Yeah. But yeah, I went last year. It was alright.
Oh my god. You ordered a Red Bull?
No, I snuck it in actually.
Oh my god. This is cute. You know, like I live here and but I've never been in here. Like I live very close to here. I mean, that's not the reason for why I'm so late, but like.
Oh no, I like to just relax and yeah.
Oh my gosh, so cute.
There's so much reading to do. Yeah.
Reading? What are you reading?
Oh, like I guess academic papers on like liquid democracy and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have I find it so hard because once you leave like academia, it's like where do you get like all the subscriptions to like get access to all the papers? I find it very.
Yeah, they say you can email the authors, but actually it's hard to get their attention.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I never email them. Like,
oh yeah.
I've never actually. I mean, like professors like in uni anyways like don't respond to you at all, and so when you then try to contact them, I feel like they're not even like if you're not even like they're not your supervisor, they're definitely not going to bother like responding to you.
I think they want people to read their papers. Just can they take the time to like send it to you?
Yeah.
Like it's like a minute of their time, right? It's like,
yeah.
or do they even have time to open the email? Yeah.
So are you going to the festival by yourself? Or are you meeting some friends there?
No, I have a lot of friends already there, but
Really?
I don't like to go early. I like to just because it's it's all weekend. It's like I don't want to spend too many days.
Yeah, because it's like, oh yeah, it's Thursday.
Yeah.
So are you guys? Yeah, what are you even doing like in London? I'm so.
Oh, I live in London. I've been here for like
You live here?
6 years. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yay.
Mainly East London lately. I used to live in Camden, and then I've got invited to live in some cool places in East London.
Yeah.
I currently have like 2 places in East London because they're both like interesting communities.
Are you gonna have like some of yours?
I like having food in front of me, but I'm not that hungry if you want any of it.
Like randomly?
It's like their thing. It's like the only thing you can order at this time.
Oh,
it's just
okay.
like this.
I'll have some.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So when did you move here? What was the whole...
So I was here a lot, like between 2011 and 2014. And it's like, I was kind of just like, yeah, I was here just a little over half the time in those years. And then I was pretty much in the States and Asia for 5 years. And then I missed a year, so I came back in 2019.
Okay.
And I've been here pretty much like ever since 2019.
That's like a long time.
It is, yeah.
What do you love about being here?
I mean,
because everybody here wants to go to the US.
It's true. Like San Francisco is pretty amazing. Like if you go to America, like I recommend San Francisco. I think the other cities are not worth it.
I think that's what everybody says where they're from.
Yeah. Oh, but I'm not even from there. I grew up in New York. I'm not a fan of New York. I will only say pretty much bad things about New York.
Yeah, because your accent is like not like West Coast at all. Is that what
I left when I was 15. So but I think that was enough time to get the New York accent. Yeah.
I really have to go at some point. I feel like it was I think Daniel, the guy that we met yesterday, who was like, yeah, London breeds like mediocrity.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's horrible. The harder you try to do like innovative things here, the more like the whole world turns against you in like ways that are hard to imagine sometimes.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like people really they resent it. Like
that's why I'm like that's why I'm so surprised that you're here because I'm like, oh my god.
It is horrible. Like I do really miss it. I mean, like it's hard, but the Silicon Valley is.
I'm so confused.
Yeah.
Like, what are you? Because like if you want to do something like cool and innovative, and it's like I would imagine you just go like elsewhere.
I do think about sometimes going back, but it also kind of feels like home. It's also the center of the
world. So where do
world.
you live in, like East London?
So lately, I have 2 places, but I'm pretty much completely now spending my time on Fish Island. You know, it's really far. It's by Stratford, like Stratford Station. It's actually not so bad because we had the Elizabeth line and the high speed from St. Pancras, so you can get to St. Pancras in 8 minutes on the high speed train. It's not too bad. Even though it's like really far East London, it's like it's well connected. There's a lot of artists and galleries there too.
Sorry, I just need to send something. Because I was like, I'm going to do this, and then I was like, I'm not going to do it. So what do you do? Like, what do you do here? Because you seem like you're okay. You're going to these like hippie festivals. You're like.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, but this is my only festival this year. I almost don't even want to go, but I'm planning to go. I already like brought my tent over to my friend's house who lives near Paddington. So, but no, what I usually I was going to like crypto event. Oh, I saw you posted about the blockchain that one in May. Yeah, I think you posted about being there on the third day.
Yeah.
And I don't think I was there on the third day. I think I was there the second day.
On the second day.
Yeah, but I don't think I came back for the third day. Were you there the second day too?
No, because I forgot what it was, but like at the time,
it was honestly a shit conference compared to others.
Oh, it was horrible. Yeah.
It was all like what was it? Bitcoin.
I think like somebody just sent me like a code.
Yeah, me too. I got a free.
Yeah,
thing,
nobody.
yeah.
I don't think anybody ever pays for the.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you go to that crazy one? Like, it was an after party for DOS. It was like, I mean, this is so like they just do this just so they can have an article written about it. But like where there's like sushi being eaten off naked women.
Oh, kind of like Kanye West, like his.
Oh, they do this every time there's a big crypto boom. Like they have to have a party with this just so like a newspaper will write about it.
Really?
Like it's so stupid.
I hate the thing is like I used to. I mean, actually, I partied quite a bit. I have to say.
It was 2,000 pounds to get in.
Really?
But I talked my way in for free, which I'm like very good at doing. Like I could get into like all these like events that cost like 2,000 pounds plus to get into.
Are you fucking serious? Yeah. Was it good?
Actually, it was pretty good. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I'm just talking. Just the crowd was pretty neat, and they were all like high energy, right? Because maybe they were feeling like they had to be because they just paid 2,000 pounds to get in.
Yeah.
So like.
I love how you're like this is like the self like a confirmation bias.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like for.
Thank you.
Welcome. That's a small cup for you.
That's so sweet.
So, man, that's the timer. You have to do the tea.
Yeah.
For how many minutes?
Oh, I know.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I drink a lot of tea.
So, give me the water. So, you have to brew it for like 3 minutes. Twist the timer. So, just focus on the black one in the middle.
Thank you.
And once you are done, you can just press the button. The tea will automatically come down.
Oh,
the
perfect.
mix will stay on top, and then you can again refill your tea.
That's so high tech. Thank you. Yeah, no, the thing is like I tend to like avoid these kind of like everybody always tells me, oh, you have to go and whatever and whatnot, and I'm always like, oh, I should, but I always like really avoid like these kind of crowds because it's like when you stay there for too long, it's like you. It's like there's a difference between engaging in something in practicality and engaging with something in the abstract.
Alright. Yeah, no, people, they get full of themselves too. Like, just everyone's just talking about themselves all the time.
But I mean, I went to like a really great rave like 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
No, was it 2 weeks ago? No, last Friday. But it was like Psytrance.
Oh, I love Psytrance, yeah.
Do you know Asterix?
No.
He's like a really big DJ. He also plays for like Tomorrowland and stuff.
Oh.
Yeah, like super cool. And he was here in London, and so I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna go. So it's kind of like I avoid going to the. Well, I still go to the crypto events, but like I kind of like stay to the reasonable time, and then I'm like I'm always the first one to leave.
Oh.
Although all of my friends
I usually like open my laptop and ignore everybody until it's ending, and then
Really?
I talk to people as they're gathering outside or something like. No, I don't know, like stuff like that, something along those lines more or less. I feel like people are more loose and open when they're like leaving, when they're done, when they feel like they're done, and like it's like I feel like it's people the conversations get more interesting.
There is.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like no conversation is good in the beginning, but I feel like, I always find it so hard because like I don't really directly work in crypto. Well, I I do. I work like with like ETFs and like ETCs and whatever because I work in finance, but it's not like the same as being like, oh my god. Because for me, it doesn't really matter to me too much like how the market is going. So it's like these crypto natives, they're always like, and I'm building this like a really interesting application on layer 2.
I don't think I've actually heard of an ETC, to be honest.
What do you mean? Like what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, like an exchange traded, like an exchange.
Oh, exchange traded currency?
Mhm.
Exchange traded currency, that's what it means? Or, that's our...
Commodity.
Oh, commodity, okay, exchange traded.
Yeah, because like in the US, like earlier this year they approved like the grayscale Bitcoin ETF, which is like spot Bitcoin.
Right.
Like exposure, which for institutional investors is like super.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah, they don't have to have a wallet and whatever.
Oh, of course, no, yeah. I thought those were ETFs, but they're treating them more as commodities.
In Europe, they do.
Oh.
Like in Europe, they don't classify as ETFs because there is this like diversification regulation, so they're not like diversified like enough in terms of like, because an ETF is like a basket, right? Usually of like different like shares and whatever.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, except for gold, right? The gold ETF, GLD, and whatever. But which is actually a commodity.
Yeah, they
like,
also
ETF,
count under commodities here.
Okay.
Yeah.
In America, yeah. I don't think we have ETC. Maybe, oh, we do have commodity trading. I actually have never traded commodities, that's why I don't really know. But I've traded everything
It's very
else,
like I bought a book on it and I was like, oh, I'm gonna read about it, and then it like turned out to be like super like apparently like the most complicated kind of trading that you could do.
Yeah. Well, there's probably a lot more to consider actually. I'm surprised I never got into it. I'm usually a fundamentals trader who looks for like I've. Well, I also really like I used to be really into writing algorithms to try to find the most misappraised stock option.
Like arbitrage. Sort of?
Not quite. Like
undervalued, overvalued.
Or just the extrinsic value. Like which I was just like look at it would just analyze every stock option and try to like pick ones that might be candidates for like which one might have the most like misvalued extrinsic value.
I see.
And then like that's the one that you would think is like if you could figure out which one is most misvalued, then that one is like most likely to move.
Sort of like more of like a strategic investment in a way, more than like tactical. What did you say?
Just for maybe you think the market missed something about like reasonable future volatility, and it'll figure it out soon. So you want to get ahead of it. I really like stock options. Like in terms of the math, I feel like it's quite like.
Did you like study math or something?
I was my passion. I was actually like, I went to like the best math high school, they call it high school in America, in New York City. And I was like the youngest person I was like the only freshman on the math team. So I was like one of the best math people in New York City for my age.
Really?
Then I kind of like lost interest in it. But it's like, I guess it's still inside of me.
So what did you end up studying?
Politics and business, pretty much.
Oh yeah, me too. Like I studied politics and economics, like undergrad, which actually I feel like ended up being more of a PPE degree,
Right.
which is like super popular here, like politics, philosophy, and economics. Yeah.
What was your favorite like courses?
Political thought. Well, that's why I majored. Like I did my postgrad in political thought at LSE.
Oh.
Because I was like, that was like a more interesting thing, but I don't think. Now that I look at it, I think political thought. It's sort of funny. Like now, the more I'm doing like reading outside of my degree, I realize political thought is pretty awful. Like it's actually not like that great of a. I don't think the discipline is wrong. I think like what they teach you in those disciplines is wrong. Like for instance, my degree was more. I studied at King's here, and the degree was more like economics focused, with like politics applied to economics, not the other way around. Whereas like a lot of humanities degrees are mostly like political science focused. I don't know if that says something to you. I think that's the like. So for instance, if we studied political thought or like economics of crime, it would be like the ideas of economic. It would be all about like economic theory, like economic philosophy, like the philosophy of economics rather than philosophy of politics. So when I later studied political theory, I was like, oh my god, I only studied economics and political thought, not like politics and political thought. Which it seems like on first glance super synonymous. I think it's not.
I mean, I feel like economists run the world.
Yeah, they do. That's
Absolutely.
exactly
Like
it.
they're higher than everybody.
That's exactly
like,
it, and that's why I'm so happy that like I studied like econ more than I did study politics. Politics is such a scam.
Oh, politics is. But I think it's good to understand the scam a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
right.
But like when I think of politics, I think of like international relations. Like I don't.
Oh, politics is everything. I
Yeah.
mean, like it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It penetrates everything. But I sort of think like, you know, when I see people who study international relations, I'm like, what did you really study? Like, what is the fundamental of your degree rather than like recounting, like, power dynamics in a way, and not even just power dynamics, but it's a very descriptive degree. It's not a very critically, and it's not a critical analysis degree. And I've talked about this with somebody else where I was like, you know, if you're in academia, a lot of the work that you do is obviously not original. It's like super just criticizing. It's like describing and then criticizing. Like very little of those social science degrees are about like originating. But maybe in the US it's different. You seem to be disagreeing.
I was thinking about yeah. I'm trying to think if I ever like was taught anything like that seemed like or like provoked to like think originally in any kind of social science class.
Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah,
like,
I don't think they really do.
They never do. They're always like, and so this is the theory that we're talking about today.
Right.
How can we see for internal logical inconsistencies of the theory? Which is obviously quite, like, I think that is a nice part of political philosophy, or like, if you like maths, for instance, it's like a lot of it is at the super abstract metaphysics level. It's like looking at internal logical consistency of somebody's thought. But at the end of the day, nobody's thought is like super consistent like throughout, you know? Especially when writers like Kant or something have written for like decades. It's like, well, of course their earlier work is super different from their later work, and then a big part of like the degree is just figuring out, well, which part of the work is going to be in the canon or something, you know what I mean? Like, what is like authoritative of their opinion and what isn't? And I'm like, why do we keep analyzing these people from like 200 years ago rather than thinking like, okay, well, there's something that is a problem today, how do we solve it? A bit like an architecture degree. I think like I saw this like meme post which was about like this girl in the US, and they were trying to build like a memorial or something for the World War. And yeah, like they were given, like the architecture PhD students or whatever were given like and their professors too, everybody was like able to put like a project in, and then sort of like, and one of them, the girls ended up winning. And I was like, yeah, like why don't they just do that? I mean, they do that with like European Youth Parliament. Like I used to be part of that when I was very young. Like they do this for like when you're in high school, kind of like MUN, you know, like United Nations kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I was in Model UN. I was like, yeah, that's why I like started to lose interest in math and stuff like that.
Exactly. So Model UN is, I guess, sort of similar to the Youth Parliament, whereas the Youth Parliament is very much more about how the European Parliament works. And like,
oh, it's a Model Congress too.
Yeah, it's also Model Congress,
right,
but not like international.
Right. Yeah. Oh, okay.
It's more like you're given like a problem, like for instance, there's a humanitarian crisis, and then you're like, how does the European Union want to solve or like help or like whatever, like white saviorism situation.
Yeah. I mean,
and they do that to get you engaged. It's such a weird hook, like they get you engaged, and then you actually study it. It's like it's all like none of it actually gets applied anymore.
They fix the topics too. Like it's like, and then you have to argue both sides a lot. Is that something that you also have to do, or not? Oh, not in that. In debate team, you have to argue both sides of the same thing.
I used to do like youth debating. Yeah. I mean, beyond next to like the European Youth Parliament. And there, you're in theory, you'd have to argue both sides, because if you want to argue for one side well, you have to understand the weaknesses of the other side, right? But I think at some point I stopped debating because I think debating itself, and that's like the whole problem with politics and political philosophy, is that politics and philosophy are fundamentally at odds with each other. Because debating is about, you know, imposing your opinion on like another party, whereas philosophy is about knowledge and truth generation. And debating as a art form, which people here seriously think it is, with their rebuttals and whatever.
Oh, it's horrible. It's
It's like it's not at all about knowledge generation, because like it's not like at the end of the debate people are like, so how, what have we learned? Like it's not like that at all. It's just like, okay, so which party won? And then that is like the fundament of like politics and like policy making.
somehow like Congress debates are better than Parliament debates. Actually, in my view, like
Yeah.
it's not just like it's not as much of the constant cheap shots
Yeah.
and the like just trying to get like it's actually there's a little bit more to it. Substance,
Yeah,
I feel like the
or like the
controversial
U.S.
debate.
Supreme Court, like when they're having like cases that they're working on.
Right. No, yeah. I mean, the U.S. somehow managed to lead on governance. It seems for a couple hundred years, and I think that's how they led on everything else. That's why I like. It's part of why I obsess over governance. I think it's at the core of everything. Like whoever can do governance the best, I think can do everything else the best.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's why like the U.S. has the NASDAQ, the biggest exchanges. But I actually imagine if something could do governance better than anything else, then they could even have the biggest exchanges. That like the biggest exchanges could be some kind of sort of DeFi-ish thing that is extraordinarily well governed.
Yeah, I guess the counterfactual to that is always just that obviously you have countries like China who are extremely good at like governing some sort.
That's true. I'm concerned about this too. That like the AI is going to give the East an advantage if like we do get like super intelligent AI.
Yeah.
Because now like the freedom and capitalism that has like done very well for the West may become a disadvantage. Like in theory, capitalism has a lot of waste. Like capitalism is like almost like AI. I feel like capitalism is like a super intelligent AI. Like, and it, like
that's like I find that super interesting that you say that. This is such a funny talk. Yeah, continue.
I mean it's almost like how do you put it? Almost like I think of like chess engines and stuff, or like these I'm probably just missing the word, but like these computing engines.
Yeah.
Like and I feel like capitalism is a way to have like kind of like a cluster, like kind of like a big like a supercomputer with like a really sophisticated engine to just like figure out what should be done. And it's almost like a super intelligent AI, just like with humans instead of like computers. Especially like we've had capitalism for longer than we've had computers, so it's almost like right. But now if you have like a super intelligent actual AI, it could potentially like figure everything out better than capitalism. But the West is going to be very used to like the freedom and the capitalism that we're used to, whereas like the East will be like not as they're just more like they'll just go along. And
oh, you mean for like central planning?
Right, things like that.
For how far they can like think in advance and like use all the historical data to make like really nice plans and.
Right, it's like why is this a restaurant and not a warehouse? It's like, well, I guess someone was willing to take the risk to make this restaurant and put capital behind it, and that's how it got determined it should be a restaurant or something, like things like that. I mean, sure, planning, whatever, but like city planning, but or like why, right? Like why is anything? And it's like because someone was willing to take the risk, and if it didn't work, then they probably would have gotten replaced by a different business in that spot or something, right?
I think it was like because like if you're interested right in maths and stuff like that, like a lot of mathematicians have like really interesting things to say, right? Like Edward Frankel, Roger Penrose. If they say something to you, like Roger Penrose is like this really famous mathematician. I think he's also like a Nobel laureate, who was in Oxford or something, and he has done like a lot of interesting interviews, and they sort of talk about like AI and like the limits of AI from like also. I guess from their point of view, which I think is always interesting to hear mathematicians talk about, like it. And they were saying, well, yeah, like the whole thing is that AI wouldn't take the risk, right? I mean, the concept of what like a risk is, like in terms of like creativity or taking like a leap of faith, that's not like intuitive to the AI. So like even when I think like when I was watching it with Edward Frankel, he had like he had like a podcast with Lex Friedman. Friedman? Do you say Friedman?
For Lex Friedman, probably, yeah.
Yeah, like Friedman, and they were sort of talking about how did like Galileo, was it Galileo? I forgot now. Who discovered that we're like turning, all the planets are turning in like the circular system, and
Galileo was persecuted for it. But I think there was also Copernicus, who I think was not persecuted.
Oh yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot. They were saying that a lot of people have sort of come up with this idea, like intuitively. Like, if you look at if you'd study the history of what knowledge was available at the time, there was really no knowledge to suggest that actually the world was, we were like turning in these like circles or in these orbits. There was no knowledge for that available, and so he was saying that like how they ended up coming up with this system was purely by intuition about something. Like they had like an intuition about something completely like they were thinking about something else, about how other like sort of like natural forms like work with each other, and then they just like extrapolated that onto like the universe. But it was not based on any kind of like knowledge, and it just happened to be by coincidence that that was also true. And you can look at it from two perspectives, and I had discussions with this about like other friends that like you can say, well, out of all the people that have had ideas, it just happened to be by coincidence that this person was right. Or what these mathematicians are also saying is that this a priori knowledge, right, kind of like a bit like Kantian, like Aristotelian, like a priori knowledge about like geometrics, is like sort of like almost intuitive to people. And so the problem with AI is that they don't have this access to this kind of like almost intuitive knowledge that is like a little bit if you want to talk to hippies, like a bit like ancestral or whatever, like in terms of like all accumulated human knowledge that becomes this kind of like moral guiding compass that is not like that we're not cognizant of in a way. And that is like the thing where I think I'm not really sure they're going to advance that far, that they would have this capability of doing that. If you know what I mean? Like having this like internal.
Not sure. Like.
You think they do?
That AI or like
yeah, it could do.
Not yet, but I don't see why it wouldn't get there. I mean, I actually think they have it. They just don't release it yet. Like, I feel like the tech companies have like AIs that could do it. Like that kind of could figure out how everything should be. Like in terms of like that it's most efficient and like theoretically economical to have like this business here and this business there and have like these people doing this work. Like I guess essentially, I guess the thesis of this is that like I'm concerned that like AI gives communism an advantage that it never had before. Like I think like communism is clearly. I mean, people can argue whatever they want, but like I think it's like experiments have been run like and that like you look at those countries and how they performed and that like it's inferior to capitalism. Even but now if you add AI to communism and you add AI to capitalism, you don't know which one. If it's like really good, super intelligent AI, if it's like probably good enough, like what we're gonna have soon, and you add it to both capitalism and communism, it might give the advantage to communism.
Yeah, I think like the.
But also, like I also think this is going to weaken the West if like this theory kind of pans out. That it would weaken the West because they're not going to adapt. Like they're not going to be able to like take away like this what we're used to. And so like the East like we're like they might become the superpowers.
Yeah, I mean like with the East you have like the whole thing that like with AI like training data they don't have like the same restrictions as we do here, which is like pretty like advantageous for them in terms of like how fast like they can develop their AI. But I think like you're assuming this under like hypothetical circumstances where there would be no power interest of the leaders to sort of keep. Because I think like the idea of like expand like knowledge that is ever like expanding in this exponential way is not even beneficial to the people like leading the country. Because if you want to be controlling a country, do you really want something that is like conscious, that is like more intelligent than you, that's actually because you don't really know the outcome of what they're going to suggest to you, and they could be like, oh, actually the way that you've been leading the country so far is really shit, and then you're like, yeah, but really I don't care about how well the country is going, I just want to keep people under control.
Filter it.
Huh?
Like imagine like like the president of China, you can have the AI tell you stuff and you don't have to share it with anybody.
Yeah.
In theory, like.
Exactly, you don't have to share it with anybody.
Right.
But I would sort of imagine you're like Xi Jinping and you're like sitting there and they're like, well, you should really be leading your country different. And then you're like, with your huge ego, because we always forget, right? These leaders, they have like the biggest ego on earth. It's like, do you really want to be told by something else, like what to do? Because like, look at Putin. I mean, it's not like he ever listened to any of his foreign advisors who told him bro, don't invade Ukraine. Like,
Mm.
I mean, it's like people have told him, they were like, don't fucking do it, don't do it, and he did it anyway. And it's like, well, from that point of view, it's like, is the AI really going to make, in hypothetical scenario, yes, but probably like it's an interesting thought experiment. In reality, it's like probably the actual like effects are going to be like rather like limited, just because of human ignorance and ego and like.
There would be times where I think it could serve them. Like at the end, ultimately, I guess they want to feel like they're in charge of a powerful country.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure like he's waiting for the day for like their GDP to pass the US's, right? Like
I think it's probably
that's
soon.
going to happen probably soon. Like
I
I'm
think
assuming
probably-
I actually think they know the exact year is probably gonna happen.
Yeah,
right?
probably.
Yeah,
I
it's
probably
like
think it
this
probably
is
yeah.
like probably statistically predictable.
Yeah.
But like he can just pick and choose. Like so, like a dystopian thing I could almost imagine is like an AI that like maybe even just observes people all the time, or just reads everything they write, reads all their text messages, and like the government controls it, and then like it just gets to know them really well, and then it just like figures out the 3 jobs that they would perform best in. And then like the government says you can choose maybe your favorite of these 3 jobs, whatever you want, like of these 3 only though, right? Because like the AI already figured out that this is what they can do well, right? Or so what they should, like how they would fit into society well, right? As well. And then
I really watched The Matrix, like.
I don't really remember that very well, but like I was just thinking like, well, what if that gives them an advantage like over like the U.S. or Europe, where it's like you get to just do whatever you want with your life. And like, what if they actually do better like that? And then it's hard for the West to compete. This is, I mean, it's somewhat of a concern that I've had for a while.
Yeah, you're looking at it from a very American like geopolitics perspective, which is just so funny because you've lived here for so long.
I am very like
Like,
US-centric.
you still like
yeah.
you still have like this very US-centric perspective, which I don't think is wrong because like fundamentally I think.
And the
You're
UN
right
is
to
there,
think
and
it was.
and like Silicon Valley is there. It's like it is the powerhouse of the world somehow, because it's like on the edge. I don't know like how. Well, maybe that is how.
Well, I don't. Well, it is from the edge from European perspective, but actually the US
I mean,
is so
geographically, yeah.
like yeah, but like but that's just because the way that like.
But that's
I mean,
probably the advantage it had.
No, I mean like I'm just saying like for instance if we look at the map. The reason for why it's always depicted that Europe is in the center is obviously like still colonial, right? Because you could also turn the map and think about the fact that the US is in between China and Europe.
Eurasia is a big continent, whereas
Yeah.
like it is like the world. Like it's almost like the rest of the continents I feel like are suburbs of like Eurasia.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
Is that how you think about
that's
it?
how I think of it. Yeah.
Really? That's so fun.
And,
Did
like,
you read like the Prisoner's Geography or something? I didn't read it. Like
I don't think so.
It would be interesting for you.
Yeah.
Have you heard about it?
I don't think so.
Really?
Prisoner's Geography?
Really? You've not heard about it?
Yeah, I'll remember it. I'll look it up.
It's like this book which just talks about like how political systems are like impacted by their geopolitical like arrangements. Like in terms of also like, are you living in the desert? Is it like what's the agriculture like, and how is that like how does that determine like power relations with your neighbor states, and like generally like for instance how like rivers flow and how has like sort of impacted like
Oh yeah.
territories. And it's I wasn't heard. No, I wasn't heard. It was a very popular book, but I just never happened to read it. Like every time there is a super popular book, I'm gonna be like 10 years late to read it, you know. But yeah, like what you're saying sounds like super similar to like the main perspective of the book.
Oh. I also think like migration. There's something fundamental about like I think like where people went through the most migrations to get to. I feel like tends to have an advantage. In both like the small and the big aspects. Like San Francisco is, I feel like the most densely powerful city in the world, right? Like in terms of, and there's so much migration, both historical and like in the lives of the people there. Like obviously it's started in Europe and then like America and then the East Coast of America and then the West Coast, right? So that's like one thing. Not in, even Europe was like Africa then Europe then, right? Like so it's like a lot of migrations, and then also almost nobody grows up in San Francisco. It has the smallest percentage population of children of any city in the U.S.
Oh really?
There's more dogs than kids actually, like factually, and I think it's the only city like that as well in the U.S. So nobody like grows up. So everybody, like almost everybody who lives in San Francisco, like migrated there.
That's really interesting. There's very little groupthink in a way, so it's like people. Like because there's so many different kinds of people that sort of come there, it's like maybe there's like more innovation sort of comes together
right.
because there's different perspectives.
It's purpose, like right, like everybody is there for a purpose. Like so many people just live where they grew up, They like
Yeah.
want to stay close to their grandparents and parents and whatever, right? And that's why they're there.
Yeah.
Even New York, I feel like has a lot of that. Like,
People stay in their hood for
it's-
sure.
yeah.
Like in the Bronx or something, and they're like, "That's where I'm from, Long Island."
right? Yeah.
I've seen what is her name? The girl that played Barbie, Margot Robbie. She does this like really amazing like Long Island
Uh,
accent. Yeah.
yeah. You have like a California accent. I'm guessing you learned. Did you learn English from like television?
Yeah, I
Cali-
did.
yeah.
I did. I know. Well, not only I went to like like a bilingual high school, and so I also like my first boyfriend when I was like 13. He was like German Japanese, but he grew up in New York, and so I think because I was always talking to him in English, that like sort of migrate. But yeah, I think like my favorite show was like How I Met Your Mother, but like they're in New York, so I'm like they're
Those are California accents, probably anyway.
really.
Oh, yeah, all like pretty much all television is what they call like the California accent, and it's considered the best accent in the United States.
Really?
Yeah,
Well, it's probably like the least annoying. That's why.
it's like just yeah, it's just considered like the most prestigious, better
Are
accent.
you-
It's the one that everyone like. Yeah, it's like if you can, it's just
That's
it's
so
a preferred
funny.
accent. It's a California accent.
Really?
Yeah,
I had no idea. I just think that
it's typically the TV one too. Like
yeah, I do come across a lot of videos where people are like voice actors,
Right.
and it's sort of like talk about like how, for instance, in the 1950s, like the accent was not the Californian accent but like the transatlantic accent, and that's why you always think that all these commercials are made by like the same guy in the 1950s, where you're like, this sounds so like similar, but really it's like this like very specific accent that they're putting into commercials.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of just the accepted like American accent. Like that's like
Yeah.
because otherwise you have an accent. Like if you're
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
you
have
like-
like a bit of a dialect or
if you're
something.
you can get a California accent is good everywhere. Whereas like if you're like from Boston, you have a Boston accent. You go down to like
Boston.
Mississippi with it,
Yeah.
like you're like weird. And
Well-
vice versa too. You'd be like yeah.
Yeah, because it's true. Like I meet a lot of people like who are like from the South or something, and the way they speak obviously is like super different in general. Full Southern twang.
Yeah.
How you say
New
it.
York accents are not that great. But
New York-
Brooklyn,
New York accent is sort of.
Bernie Sanders is from
Mm.
Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn.
Oh really?
Yeah.
What do you think of Bernie Sanders? He's really like.
No, I just have some like hang-ups on people sometimes. Like, I just write them off for stupid reasons. Like,
What happened with Bernie?
no, I
Sanders?
mean this is like okay, I can write him off for a million reasons, but like, there's just one that I always will get hung up on a person, especially like if they want to, especially like someone wanting to be a leader.
Yeah.
It's gonna sound so dumb, but I'm probably not. He paid off his mortgage early. I like really hung up on people paying off their mortgage. This is stupid prejudice. It really is. This is dumb prejudice. I'm really hung up on people paying their mortgage early.
Because it's like there's no point for them to pay it off early.
It's like they don't think very much of themselves. If they think they can't outperform their interest rate, that it's like better to carry the mortgage, then they really don't think very much of themselves and their like abilities to like think.
Oh my god! Like in terms of like their long-term performance, it's just like they think that they're gonna be stagnating.
I would never in a zillion years think I couldn't outperform 7% APR, even on a very large amount of money. So
Yeah.
like I bet his mortgage rate wasn't even 7%,
Yeah.
and he paid it off early. It just shows that he's like doesn't think very much of himself, in my view.
Really, that is so interesting. I've never heard anybody say that. That's very funny.
Yeah, I like
But I
for like
think,
leadership positions. I really like don't
Yeah.
trust people who would pay their mortgage early. Like get off.
so yeah, you must love Trump then because he's like super like
She does leverage.
he
He does
like,
leverage
he
a little
leveraged
bit.
a lot.
Yeah.
He's like
He
in
does
debt
actually
all the
did that.
time.
I mean, I don't.
And like I think like it was Elon Musk who was like, oh,
The thing is, I don't trust Trump's intentions. I actually think if he had the right intentions, maybe he'd be okay. But I don't like really trust his intentions.
What do you think are his intentions?
Power through conflict. Like I think he's more than happy to like incite a war
Really?
if it helps him. Like I don't think he cares about people. I think he'd be fine with like 20 million Americans dying from some wars or anything, as long as it helps him have power. And like I don't think Biden is quite the same. I don't think he would like be okay with 20 million people dying just so he can have power. So like that's why I don't trust. Like I kind of do trust Trump's competence and like that he can get what he wants. I just don't trust what it is that he wants.
Yeah, it's because it's not like super. I mean, he's just not a very transparent guy in a way. Like
I don't think. I think
he puts his money where his mouth is, but you don't really know where his mouth is.
I think he's a complete psychopath. I think he sees people as like rocks. They don't matter.
Really?
Like yeah, so I think like he wouldn't even care if everyone in the world died, as long as he's happy in the end. Like I don't think he cares. Like or if you just like if everyone in the world dies, just him and 5 of his best friends, and they have everything they want. Like I think he's okay with that. Like that's why I don't trust him. Like
You certainly have to be like self-centered. I mean, like in a way to get where he got, like before he was, like a real estate mogul or whatever he is, and then like obviously his wife is like super. What is it called?
Honestly, his family was racist. His father was racist. Like, I'll tell you how. Like, well.
But like, because his father also.
But the reason why I
like
think
an Eastern European woman, right? Like, he just continued the trend.
I mean, I know the neighborhood. He had a big apartment complex with 3,500 people living there.
Yeah.
And like fewer than 5 were black. And like I know this part of Brooklyn,
yeah.
and like that's hard to do. You have to really be trying to keep black people out to make that happen.
Really?
Yeah. To have like 3,500 people apartment and have like just a handful who are black, like that takes effort. That's like a lot of effort to keep black people from wanting from living there.
But isn't like the whole problem in the U.S. anyway that like a lot of black people don't receive mortgages?
Oh, but this was rentals. But like, black people never. That was a problem. I think it's gotten better. But it actually is. It's true. They did. Some people did some studies on this.
Yeah, I feel like I read this in my political science degree. There was like this whole thing where they're always talking about like in the U.S. like it's so hard for like black people to get because it's like about the postcode and like where you like.
Oh, that too.
Like,
but I even saw some guy wrote that he started to have his white friends go into banks for him with all of their like information, pretending to like so like the same social security number and everything, but as like a white person, and like they were getting loans much easier somehow, which is seems strange because like I mean you think it all just goes into a computer, but maybe not.
Well, maybe nowadays it does, because like nowadays they have a lot of like I was just reading about like a sort of like AI like mortgage reference like aid agencies that they're building to like reduce this like intermediary like problems. No, I mean he's definitely a racist guy. I think that there is no doubt to that. But I think that like
I mean everybody has some prejudices.
No,
I know this is strange. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh.
I think
Bizarre.
Well, then I get to drink out of a teacup, which is nicer. I still get to have a Red Bull. I'm not big on like customs and rules.
That's so hilarious.
No, I mean I can behave, especially in groups. I realize in groups you have to behave. Usually, it depends on the group, but like because then.
So if you're not really like fussy with customs, like where are your parents from? Are they Americans?
Yeah, no, like they're super New York. Like all of my grandparents were born in New York, and all my parents were born in New York. Yeah.
That must explain it now. Why?
Yeah.
It's the ultra American.
Yeah.
Is it like Italian background?
Yes.
Yeah,
Italian. Yeah, there's a big Italian community in New York.
People are very Italian, so you're like actually like an Italian American, but like so detached from their Italian roots that there's no Italian left.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to get my Italian passport, hopefully soon, because like I'm supposedly entitled to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Really.
Yeah, they just made it really hard. They just like it's like legally you're entitled to it, but then they just bottleneck the appointments to get it so much. So because I think they were sick of New Yorkers getting Italian passports by like using their great grandfather or whatever, and so it's like they couldn't change the law to take away the entitlement. Instead, they just changed the law to make there be like a big backlog of appointments so that like very few can get it like over time.
Yeah, my friend, she's like I have a lot of friends who are Italian, and one of my friends, she has to get her passport renewed or something, and she also said that they just never have like appointments free to even do it. Like they'll send you an appointment in like 6 months or something. Like it's so bizarre.
It got harder the last 10 years. I actually had it. Yeah.
You know, and I was just like, it was personally just really stressed me out to know I have like an appointment in 6 months. Like especially for something like a visa, like a passport. It's like it will always be on the back of my mind.
Yeah, and I think within 2 years at the most I'll have the Italian passport. I'm on it. Like it's just a slow process.
That's bizarre. Yeah. That's absolutely bizarre.
And just have that. Oh, and I might get British soon, and I have American, so I'm working on those two passports.
Really,
So
I have a German passport. I have settled status here, So I'm not really like fussed about.
Right.
I'm not like too fussed about getting a British passport because I'm like, oh, for what?
Yeah.
It's like I'm not like I already have a lot of rights.
That's true.
Like as a citizen here, like, and I have indefinite leave to remain.
Yeah.
Like I can literally stay here for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I don't need to become like a British
Yeah.
citizen. Like for me, like being a citizen of a country and like having like the passport is such a like some people like to collect them, but for me it's like almost like such a personal thing. I'm like that would really mean that I have to endorse this culture, and I just do not.
To me, it's almost like you have the privilege to renounce this as like I don't think American citizenship sucks, but like if you're overseas,
Yeah.
there's like you have to file taxes. If you're like make a lot of money, you have to pay taxes, even like on your
Oh,
foreign
yeah.
income. It's so crap.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know that I could ever renounce it. Like I mean I think about it sometimes, but I feel like I'm too. I don't think I could ever do it.
That's crazy.
But I mean I think part of me maybe thinks I might be tempted to run for office in America. I had run for office in the past, but like I hate their political system. Like I don't know. Maybe I always imagine when I'm 70 years old or something, I might like want to run for office again in the U.S.
I feel like this thing, cause like one of my friends, her ex-boyfriend is like super like set on like running for office. I think he's also now in Washington, like working for some NGO. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's this kind of thing that like you just have to really feel like you're born to do in a way. Like it sounds bizarre, but I think you need to your level of delusion has to be like super high. Because when I was younger, I was like thinking, oh, I would love to have been like chancellor of Germany, which I think is, by the way, not very hard. I think if you have like this right sort of like education, I don't think it's very hard to become chancellor of Germany because like the current chancellor is really bad. But like he used to be my mayor, like of my I've interviewed him as well, like when I was in high school doing like stuff. So yeah, I know he's like pretty stupid. So I'm like, if he is there, it can't be that hard, you know, especially if you're like white. But then I'm Russian, like my parents are Russian, and I don't think the record is like super clean. So I don't think like when I when I grew up a little bit and I got a bit older, and I was like, yeah, I don't think like I would go very far, because like surely they must conduct like kind of like you know they at the end of the day they don't really care about too much about how intelligent somebody is that is in power. They really care about like whether you're like in Germany at least, I think they do really care about how rooted you are in the country, like your like sort of like ancestral roots. I can't really see people being in Germany in government, high positions that are like second generation immigrants. Like it's not like a.
So you have to be more than second. Like you have to be like far.
I think like your grandparents at least would have to come from Germany. I mean, both of my grandparents from my dad's side are from Germany, but they didn't grow up there. And also, like, I'm Jewish, and like this whole thing, I'm just not. They're like, it's a super Christian country. Like, it sounds a bit ridiculous, but I think for Germany as a country, it's much better if it's run by like a white Christian person, because
it's almost opposite. In democratic politics in the U.S., like I would almost be at a disadvantage. Like there'd be I feel like it's very well, except for black people because they were brought over as slaves. But other than that, like, yeah, you're at a disadvantage in democratic politics if you. I feel like if your grandparents were born in America, they really like immigrants or kids of immigrants, and like so I'd have to go back to my great grandparents to have like immigrants, and that's actually really bad. That's maybe fine for Republican politics, but for Democratic politics, bad. Like which I've never been in Republican politics.
Well, the thing is, like in Germany, like the two main parties that are running are like center parties. So one of them calls itself center right, and the other one calls itself sort of center left, but they're both pretty much the same. And one of them is literally called the Christian Democratic Union. Well, that's not the one that's in power right now, but that was the one that was in power for the last 30 years or so. Like, I mean, no, not that long.
Actually, quite hot, yeah.
So, you have like the Christian Democratic Union, and they say that the Christian is only in the name, because obviously you have separation of like the state and religion. But you know, it's not really like, you know, at the end of the day, it's like they're super. I mean, also for me being Jewish, it's like they're just super racist. I mean, in Germany, and I think that it's a bit unfortunate, but like they, in contrast to the U.S., like they just shoot themselves in the foot by exactly the fact that I'm never gonna run for office. And that is also the reason for why I didn't go into public office anymore, because I was like, I looked at like how much.
Were you still thinking about it when you chose your like studies?
I chose my studies because I wanted to work for like international organizations,
Oh.
and at some point I did think, well, maybe I'll go back and do a diplomacy like degree, because you have to go back to do another 5 years, like after your undergrad, to do like 5 years of diplomacy. But I thought to myself, like, this country has actually fucked over my family like so much. I mean, they tried to kill my family, like they murdered like half of my family, like Jews, like, and then they have it was pretty horrible to my parents when they moved like to Germany in terms of like racism and xenophobia. And at that point, I really thought, do I really want to give my life away to a country that has essentially not really done a lot, but leave me with a bunch of like generational trauma?
Yeah.
I have like a weird
Yeah.
relationship, like I think, like as an immigrant in the US. I think it's, I don't know how people feel there, because being an immigrant is like such an American thing, whereas in Europe, because people in Europe are like, I had this conversation with my brother because his ex-girlfriend, she's like super German, like, and her family goes for generations back to, German father country, we call it, right? And so people here, like, they are just weirdly rooted, like ancestrally, like where they're from, and it's bizarre. And it's like this, like even in the UK, like some people that you meet, like, they've been potato farmers since like I don't know how long.
Yeah.
It's like,
Forever, yeah.
and they've been potato farmers since like the 15th century, and they've always been here. And that is like in the US, you just don't really, unless you're Native American, you just don't have this tie to like a soil of some sort. Whereas
Oh
in
yeah.
continental Europe, that is like super huge. People
But that
have
means
this,
you're right, because you can just be an American.
yeah, you can
Like,
just be an American.
yeah.
Whereas like here, it's like you're really, your nationality and your identity is tied to this soil that you're like born and grew up in, and people have own like land, and it's so.
Even the birthright citizenship, it's like it seems weird because it's easy to take advantage of.
Yeah.
But it's like it just like you can't say, well, where are you really from? Like you're born there, you're American. It's like you can't. It doesn't matter where your
In
parents.
America, that's super like a sensitive thing, right? Like in Europe, it's not at all.
Well, the fact that like you're not automatically a citizen just by being born somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is exactly here. It is exactly.
So it matters where your parents are. Like in America, it's like if you're born here, it doesn't really matter where your parents are. You're a citizen because you're born here, and you're American because you were born here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here it's like. Yeah, it's not like that at all. Although
Very few countries have that. Yeah, just like especially like the rich ones, like Canada and U.S. are pretty much it.
Yeah, it's like. I mean, in Germany, it's really easy to get a German passport. That's, I think, more because of the fact that they have like really low birth rates, and like they have all these demographic issues, like, and so they at some point had to change like their approach to like immigration. But they, I mean, I even had this like question, which is so funny. I was in London, and I was like studying, and I was working like as a waitress at the time, like sort of part time for a little bit, and I had this girl from Munich come, and she was like, I was talking to her, and I had like dark hair, like I dyed my hair again, but like dark. And she was like, oh, so where are you like really from? And I was like, wow, I've never heard a German person ask me this question, because usually my circle is like super immigrants. Like all of my friends are like second generation immigrants, and I know very few German bred people in a way, like people who are like really like natively German. I know very few. And so I never had like real conversations with people, because everybody I knew was like mixed. And so the fact that she was asking me this, I was like, this is so interesting, because since I never had this exposure to people a lot that are super German, I didn't actually realize that I didn't really look German at all. It's so bizarre. Like I never thought about it until I was confronted with it, and I was like, wait, so my whole life, I thought, well, I'm white, surely I'm like here, but apparently everybody else would have looked at me and thought, oh, she's not from here, and I never noticed that. But like, and I always thought, like, it's super funny, because when you're white and you're in Europe, people can clearly tell like whether you're like Italian. It's the same way I look at you and I'm like, oh, you're like Italian, right?
Right, in America, yeah.
Yeah, but like,
like
it's
that,
like I can super like see all the features, because you're so, everybody's again like so tied to their soil. And so when people look at you, they do definitely look at your features, whether you're white or not. And I was like, yeah, that is super interesting, because when you think about the US, and a lot of like the liberal politics comes from the US, it's always like white versus black, rather than like there's different degrees of whiteness, which is what you have in Europe. Like there was different degrees of whiteness, and your features, like your nose, your eyebrows, they become, because everybody's white here, so we differentiate much more between that. And then you have these kind of different. I mean, even like they were saying,
it's more racist here, probably, isn't it? Somehow, I don't know.
like it's just more like, for instance, even like with the whole Ukraine thing, right? In
Even
Germany.
anti-Semitism seems worse here.
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, my father's family Jewish. Like my father's
Yeah.
side is Jewish. Yeah.
And like what was I going to say? Yeah, for instance, like with Ukraine, they were saying, okay, so in 2015 we had in Europe the refugee crisis, right? Like the Syrian refugee crisis, and they didn't want to let in any refugees. But then you had Ukrainian invasion, and everybody was let in Germany. I know this because I worked for because I was translating for refugees in Germany for a year, and they were the whole problem. The whole discussion was amongst like left-wing people was that like, well, okay, like 6, 7, 8 years ago when we were having that crisis, you didn't let anybody in because they're Muslim, and now you're letting in all these Ukrainians. But by the way, Ukrainians are not Western, like they're not Western people. Like they're not, and I know this because I'm Russian and Ukrainian, right? Like we have super different culture, and we don't like, they don't even like white people. Like we are not like, you know what I mean? Like our culture is so distinct from, you like if you think that Russian and Ukrainians are somehow different, like you haven't got it all wrong. They're super similar. And if you wouldn't like, if you let Ukrainians in, then surely you must have also let Russians in, first of all. And then also, if you're making a distinction between Ukrainians and Syrians, it's basically just about their whiteness. It's kind of like you're assuming that people who are white looking like have the same cultural values as you when they don't necessarily.
It's not like more of a like rebellious culture in Ukraine since it's not part of Russia.
No, like that is super like,
okay, that's fine.
That is like a that's super funny. It's like a super like, that is a very, people here don't realize that actually before this war, nobody spoke Ukrainian. Like Ukrainian was not a language that was like a real like used language. Like if you like, for instance, people who are 40 now have never spoken Ukrainian in their life. Like a lot of them don't even speak Ukrainian. Like my mom's family is from Crimea. I mean, I'm sure they understand Ukrainian, but it was just never spoken. Like I understand Ukrainian a little bit, but it's like it was not spoken because during the Soviet Union, everybody spoke Russian.
Was that election real? Like the election to succeed from, or the election? There was an election to leave Russia, right? And I mean, I remember looking at the numbers, but like.
So like I studied this in uni. So like how they do politics over there is called like a patronage system. So it's funny because it looks really fake, but it's not like a rigged election. Like it's not like a super rigged election, which is funny. I mean, it is still corrupt, but it is not rigged in the sense that they're putting in fake votes or something. All those votes are real. However, how it works is
that, like, stuff's about Putin, no? Like, Hasn't Putin stuffed the ballot? That's the term we use in America. Like, he puts fake ballots in?
No,
he doesn't?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Those votes are all real. And the funny thing is that like they have terms for this. So it's called Poutines. So for the first half of this, it comes from the fact that you have Poutines.
Right.
Poutines are people because Putin has been in power since the year 2000. So everybody that has been in Russia today grew up with Putin as their leader. And you have to remember that Russia actually, like 100 years ago, was in a completely different state. It's a bit like China. So you had the Tsar Kingdom that fell in the early 20th century. So this was actually like, this whole country was a monarchy until very recently. Then they went through like a massive war. Then you had communism, and then they suddenly jumped into capitalism. And Putin was the person that skyrocketed, like after Gorbachev, Russia's like economic situation like really high up. I mean, he also fucked it over like later on, but like the first 14 years of his rule were really good for the country. Like he was super pro capitalism. He actually.
I've met a lot of Putin people. Like they say that, like he seems to be very popular.
He's very popular there. He's done a lot of actually good things. Like when he got to power, he put all the corrupt people into prison or whatever. However, that is where it gets like so he basically established himself as somebody that is like can lead the country, and then the country didn't do that well anymore. And then he started going a bit crazy because when the country is not going well, how can you convince people to vote for you, right? Because again, those votes are real votes. And there's two ways in which they're basically convincing people to vote for him. So in 2014, they called it the traditional turn, which is basically the country stopped doing well, and he couldn't use his economic arguments anymore to get people to vote for him, right? So he had to appeal to religion. And so all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he became this like religious fanatic. Which, by the way, you have to remember that during communism, he was like a communist spy. Like religion was not allowed. Like people were not allowed to have any kind of religious affiliations. That's why people from like Eastern Europe, they're like actually not. I mean, a lot of them are Orthodox, but a lot of them are also very apolitical because they were never allowed to have political opinions or religious views on anything during the Soviet Union. And so you have to remember, okay, this guy that never had any religious opinions at all was like a fucking spy. All of a sudden is this like mega pro-orthodox like supporter. It just doesn't make any sense. And he did this because he started to appeal to all those people that are like religious to make this country like great again. And that's how then he like got like a second round of like new like support. And the patronage system works in that way, where it's like you have the Kremlin as the center, and then it kind of like spreads its arms throughout the rest of Russia and like Eastern Europe. And what they do is they go to companies, and the company, like for instance, your boss will come to you and be like, "Oh, if you vote for Putin, I'm gonna give you money," or like, and that is basically comes from the fact that so it's like a federalist country. Russia is a federalist country, so the amount of money that gets allocated from the Kremlin to different constituencies depends on how well they vote for him. So it's not like they actively ever tell anybody you have to vote for Putin. It's just that they know if they can convince their employees to vote for him by their own incentive, like the CEOs by their own incentives, the government will give them like a better contracting deal on building infrastructure or something. So it sounds bizarre because from the outside you're like, well, this is super corrupt. It is, but it is still real people being like, oh, this is like, if I vote for him, he will actually put money here and make it better or something. So it's not rigged at all. It's like, it's not rigged in the terms of like he puts votes in. It's just that like they have this power centered that convinces everybody that it's good for him to vote for him, which is obviously not true because he's not making the country better.
All democracies. I mean, are really, like all contemporary democracies are BS. Like,
yeah, but it's like super shocking because I thought for a long time too that the elections are like mega rigged, and then it turns out that people do really just love him there. Like it is very, you'd be like, surprised because obviously they have propaganda. They don't have like access to. I mean, people our age, they obviously have VPN, but you know, like people like, I mean, Russia's like such a big country. A lot of it is like super countrysidal, like provincial. It's like people don't have access to like a lot of good education. I'm not like I never judge anybody that I know that comes here and they're like pro Putin or pro Russian, because I'm like, yeah, I mean, if it's kind of like living under a dictatorship, right? Like when you have somebody who comes from China and they come here and like a year ago and they tell you China is the best country in the world, I'm like, surely you must think that because you were raised this way like for 20 years of your life. Of course, when you're confronted with like the counterfactual by like random people in a different part of the world, you're not going to change your mind. It will take some time. So I find it very problematic when people get very, that's a very US-centric perspective, that people get like, oh, this is so awful, how can you be pro this and that? And I'm like, yeah, but from your perspective, would you want your country to lose, like in a war? No, nobody wants their country to lose. It's like this.
Yeah,
I mean,
sanctions though. Like, I mean, like
here, by the way, a lot of Russians here, they do want their country to lose.
The cost of the war, though, like the sanctions and like the being less integrated. Yeah, that was. I mean, that didn't seem very smart.
But again, I don't
for the country. Yeah.
Like, it's so funny because before this war, everybody lived in peace. Half of my family is Ukrainian, right? So this whole thing is just like mega propaganda fabricated. And also those people don't have choice, like, right? Like, when you're 25 old, when you're 25 and up, you're basically drafted to war. You don't have a choice. What do? It's like, are you gonna sit there and be like, oh, I don't want to do this? It's like, you're like in war now. You could be killed any second. Well, you better fucking try and survive. And also they pay you a lot of money, and then they send this money back to your family. It's horrible. I mean, nobody wants, it's like they have protests in Russia like all the time, where they're basically like, we can't believe that you're sending our children into war. But obviously those protests get shut down pretty quickly. And by the way, in Ukraine it's the same, because one of my friends, he like works for the German army, and he was training. Huh?
They can't protest either in Ukraine.
No, they're training Ukrainian soldiers, like not soldiers, but like Ukrainian officers. And he was telling me already that like more than half of the people that he's trained, like just this year, already died. So it's like, actually, even in Ukraine, there's no incentive for people. Nobody wants this war. Nobody wants to die. And it's like all those leaders. I mean, both in Ukraine and in Russia, they're so corrupt. Like it's bizarre because people here think, oh, the leaders in Ukraine care about their country. I'm like, Zelensky, and everybody knows this in Ukraine. It's like Zelensky's he is chilling his ass off, meeting like country leaders in other countries, well, all of his own people are dying in his own country. Like, you should be there with your country, like, fighting.
I couldn't imagine if I was in like his position that I could have like put in that rule where like men couldn't leave. Do you remember that when it started? Like I just can't imagine that I would like decide to do that. Like I think that's okay. Or like I would think like I know like the country is an existential threat to like the country, but like I just like can't imagine that I would go that far.
But that's exactly it. Like, like they both of them, both of them are like super power hungry. Like Putin is nuts, right? Everybody knows this, but it's like it's bizarre to say that like Ukrainian leaders are not nuts. You know what I mean? Like it is like you cannot, because essentially because before this war they were super intertwined countries, like for many years, and like they're all business, like everything. Like it's super weird to say that they're like this whole thing that the West has fabricated that they're super distinct cultures is quite frankly bizarre to everybody who's Eastern European. I mean, unless you're from Kiev, right? Because then you're like, you're proud and but then it's not because you believe that there always was a distinction. It's because you realize now there has to be a distinction made. Like it is not because there was, it's not because you were actually separate, but it's just because you realize, well, if you're attacking our country, well, now we don't want to be associated with you anymore, so we should build a new culture.
Yeah. Oh,
but like it's like awful, like when, I mean, like I know, because I'm very involved in like the Eastern European community here, and it's like, we go to restaurants that used to be like, you know, Russian restaurants or something, and then they're rebranding them as like Eastern European restaurant or like Ukrainian restaurant or something, and I'm like, bro, like this is just so weird. Like we like, and it's like we will be sitting at a table, like me, like a Ukrainian, and like, you know, like maybe somebody from like Tajikistan or like us, you know, like we're all like sitting at this table together in this fucking rebranded restaurant, and we're all still the same people sitting here, and now you're rebranding this. It's just so bizarre, and that's why I think when I hear people talk about geopolitics, I'm always like a little bit like, it's just hard because a lot of it is like everybody has, like the US has like incentives, like the US had like huge incentives to meddle with Ukraine's decision on how they're like advancing in the war, like what moves to make, you know, because Ukraine, like the US is supporting the war like at a massive, like they're like the biggest supporters of the war, partially. And I think like the fact that they're exporting so many weapons and money there is a big reason for why maybe they did say, well, now all the men have to stay and fight. Do you know what I mean? Because maybe if you didn't have that kind of like, maybe if you had different kinds of power or like something else, you don't know. Like if the U.S. wouldn't have meddled, maybe they would have had an alliance like with different countries in Eastern Europe, and maybe like the tensions could have been like resolved elsewhere, just rather than like through an entire fully.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like if governments have like the political capacity to like find solutions to conflict. I mean, just because I was thinking about like the cost of these wars on like world GDP, like especially like the stock market. I remember I took a decent loss when Russia took Crimea. Like it crashed the U.S. stock market. Like it was expensive for Americans. Like,
I mean, it's expensive for you anyway because you're spending a lot of money on this war.
And I'm sure it all reverberates when gold GDP goes down.
War. I mean, that was like the craziest part to me. I'm like, you guys are paying for a war that has nothing to do with you. And it is just so...
But isn't it like our imperialism and like our ability to like put McDonald's in Russia, and like we want them to behave then if we're gonna have our McDonald's there, and like all that, just all of that, and like Android phones, and we like, cause we make money off Google and Apple and iPhones. It's like, you know, Russians have iPhones.
Look at it now. Like, I mean, it's all gone, and they just fucking replaced it with something else. I mean, it's just a market economy where it's like you know what I mean? Like, it is an autocracy, but it's still...
It's funny, they didn't play that. There were cards that the U.S. could have played that they didn't. Like, they could have ordered Google to make Android phones stop working in Russia. Like, that was like they could have done that. They held that one back.
Or like satellite, I don't know, something like satellites, or like there was so many things they could have done that are like not like the super like petty move. Like,
I feel like if it was bad enough, that would have been it. Because I even looked this up. Google has the ability to make Android phones just stop working.
Really?
Yeah, and under like U.S. law, for military reasons, they could, like the president could actually just order Google to do that, and they'd have to do it. So like, those are things they could have done. Like they were doing all these other things, but like they held some things back.
That's very interesting. I think I think even that they now found out who blew up the Nord Stream, where they were like, oh, it's a Ukrainian that like blew it up, which is like, I mean, everybody knew that. That's not like a, it's not like a, because it was like the biggest project between Russia and Germany.
So yeah, it was Ukraine. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're now trying to arrest, like they basically found out who it is and they're trying to arrest them. I mean, probably they've known this already for a long time if they're releasing it to the news. And I also just thought like, okay, interesting. Look, the whole way that all of this plays out. But I just personally, after my degree, I thought discussing geopolitics is so. It's actually so pointless from like a civilian perspective because you have no idea like what, like you said, like you don't know at all what the incentives are for governments to do what they do, and so it's like discussing it is like you're blindfolded and you're like trying to put the pieces together of something that you have no idea what it's actually about. I don't know if you saw like the Tucker Carlson interview with Putin.
I definitely saw parts of it that I remember. Like I probably watched it. I probably just don't remember it all.
I watched the whole thing, and they basically like Tucker Carlson was asking him at some point a lot of questions about like, so when like what did the U.S. government do in XYZ situation? And at some point Putin looked at him and was like, why don't you go ask your country that question? Like, why are you coming to me to ask me about your country? Is like governance. That's so bizarre. Don't you realize how bizarre it is that you're coming to Putin? Like Tucker Carlson asking Putin, so what did the president do at that point in time? And they're like, well, you should ask your own presidency that. And that is like the extent of how.
Trust.
Yeah, it's like the extent of like how we actually know that. I mean, even Americans know. And I mean, Tucker Carlson literally worked in media, and he is still somebody who would go to ask one of the biggest dictators in the world to be like, do you know what our country really does? Because we have no fucking clue. Even now, for instance, my company, like they, because we work in finance, right, and they're headquartered in New York, and we work with like, so one of the people that we work with is like a professor called I should know this. Jeremy Siegel. Professor, yeah, I think Jeremy Siegel. Anyway, he's like a really like big like finance policy like expert, professor, whatever. And right now he's sort of like analyzing like the rate cuts and like what's happening with like there was a whole recession, right? Like there was recently like a big situation, and he's kind of like looking at like what is the Fed doing, and he was like, yeah, the Fed is not doing what they basically say in their policy making, like plans what they would do in circumstances like such as these. Like they're super like holding off on a lot of things. And then he was recently on CNBC and he was like talking about it and whatever, and he's like, yeah, the Fed is not doing what it said they should do. And he was like, I have no idea why they're not doing what they said they should do or like they would do. And so even like at that point where you're like, okay, so academics are literally on television being like, we have no idea what you're doing. Like you should have handled the recession better. Like when they were talking about inflation and whatever, like interest rate cuts. Like I mean, like the whole thing with the Fed, right? Like they've been anticipating these interest rate cuts. They're just not like really, from what I understand, they're not really coming. And there's this whole uncertainty about like how they're dealing with stuff.
I mean, sure. But I think you want to have the cards to play. You don't want to commit to playing them, and then also you're just fairness. Like I mean. Maybe you don't want people to be trading on this information so early, like, or you don't want it getting priced in yet into just all the things that would get priced into.
But then at the same time, like they know, for instance, that because they've been announcing this, like that they were planning on like cutting the rates since like the beginning of this year, and there was such a there's so much uncertainty and like speculation about it, and then like when like the recession hits and they're not really doing anything. Or like there could be a recession coming, like we never know, and like the stock market sort of crashes, and you're like, well, what do we do now? And it's like they're not doing anything. It's like you're just instilling like a lot of uncertainty in the market.
Look, they might want to see if it's sustained or not, because they can only do it so often, right? You got to pick and choose when to like do these things. It's like a workshop, like you're spending out of your like toolkit of like managing an economy. And like you don't want to like use up all your like things in your utility belt if you don't have to.
But it's not like there's a, what is it called? it's not like there's like a limit to, you know, it's kind of like how people. I find it so funny. There's this meme
So,
on Instagram.
so what if the rumor can fix it? Then that's better, isn't it? Like, if just the rumor of the possibility of something can fix the recession, then that's good enough. So maybe, like, give the rumor a chance to work and see if that, like, just turns it around. I think that's not unreasonable.
I mean, like, I think they're waiting anyway now for the U.S. election to be over, because the U.S. election usually, they're gonna, now with Kamala Harris running, like, they're gonna put a lot of more money again into, you know, like, putting up consumer confidence regardless, which could, like, you know, balance itself out again. But she's so funny, like, in Europe, like, I see very, like, I see just a bunch of memes about her. So it's like,
I think I've seen American memes, because I still like my social media is very American. Like, all of it, like, yeah.
I've seen, like, a lot of memes about, like, people being, like, she wants, like, basically, like, universal healthcare for everybody, like, whether they're, like, immigrants or not. Like, she just wants healthcare for everybody that's, like, in the country, like, whether they're illegal immigrants or, like, not. And I think, like, a lot of people, like, I think it's, like, super European perspective. But I was like, can you apply, like, European perspectives? And I mean, actually, in Europe, it's like, well, if you're, like, an unregistered illegal immigrant, you wouldn't really get healthcare either. Like, you have to be registered, like, even as a refugee. But I was like, how do you want to make this happen? I just find that, like, I don't think like, the values she has are necessarily wrong. I just wonder, like, are they...
America can afford this, to be honest. And also, as a Democrat, you have to, the party would hate you. Like,
Really?
it is very polarized in America. Like that's actually a requirement of being a Democrat, is that you want everyone to have free healthcare. Like, I mean, it's gotten to that point. It didn't used to be like that, but I just can't even imagine where you could get away. Like, certainly not in California, but where the Democratic, because every state has, like, their own little Democratic machine, but, like, I would say most states you could not get away with it in the party, like, to not support that. You'd be lucky if maybe Oklahoma or Kansas, and, like within the party for the state. No, it's
I
like,
find it so bizarre that it's so polarized, because if they had, like, if they were slightly more center, like, I think things would actually... I mean, the fact that, like, I think, like, from a European perspective, what I think is super bonkers is that the US, like, still debates topics that in Europe nobody would discuss anymore. Like, I think, like, for instance, with abortion, I think, like, the fact that, like, that is...
Europe doesn't even seem to have such great abortion rights. Everybody has to pretend there's, like, some BS reason for it. Like, it's not just...
You can get abortions.
I feel like on paper it's not as good. Just because everybody can, like, make up a reason why, like, that qualifies.
Everybody can get an abortion here.
Yeah.
Like, you can go and get, like, your birth control, and, like, super easy. Like, I feel like, unless you're in Poland or something. And in Poland, they basically have camps in Germany where they kind of, like, travel over to do it. So I find it super weird that over there it's just, like, this massive topic where I'm like, your entire society is stuck up on this?
Of course, because...
Like, there's other things you should be talking about.
I think that's the
weird.
point. Actually, this is
so weird.
I feel like this actually illustrates, like, the issue of, like, political capital. I don't know. I think... Sorry, I was a little stuck on something. I was thinking about, like, I noticed because you wrote about quadratic voting in one of your posts. I was reading that. Like, I feel like quadratic voting is just, like, making something that's very metaphoric and horrible into something literal and horrible. Which is, like, but I think that's why, the reason why abortion is so big is, like, you can choose, like, I mean, theory, like, you can give money to a business-friendly Democrat and a business-friendly Republican. I mean, all the Republicans are almost always theoretically business-friendly, right? And you could give them money, or you can actually, you don't give them money. Sometimes you just run the ads for them. It's like, I could be, like, some capitalist or something, and I will actually, like, run for, like, a Democrat who I like for business reasons. I will run, like, pro-abortion right ads for them. I will actually, like, pay the TV commercials and be like, this Democrat loves, like, abortion rights, right? And then in a Republican area, I'll, like, have maybe some other Republican who I like for business reasons, and I'll run ads for him. I'll actually pay the TV companies myself, like, to run ads for him about how he's going to, like, preserve whatever God's will to let babies live, right? And and then, like, they will do well because I, like, spent money running these ads, and then and then they'll vote for the business stuff I want, and like that's why abortion is the fight in America. It wastes political capital, and then it's like
Yeah, like the attention is sort of distracted off.
because if
other
you can
things.
win an election because of transphobia or either side of the abortion debate, you get power over the budget.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like one of the reasons I like liquid democracy a lot. Actually, I thought I invented liquid democracy. Then, like, I always think I invented things, and I find out someone else invented it. Like when I was like there are all these things I thought I invented when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and then I realized no, like they've been around. But I thought I invented liquid democracy and instant runoff voting, ranked choice voting.
Really?
Yeah, and then people told me about them. Like, no, you didn't invent them. But.
That is pretty funny. That is the unfortunate fate of everybody who thinks.
Who thinks? Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to think of
Everybody
something
has
that
thought
no
the
one's
ones who
thought, yeah.
thought before you.
No, I think some of like what I'm doing now, I don't know that anybody else really. Like, actually, the work I'm doing is crazy. Like, it's literally insane, actually, honestly. But like, I feel like there's no one else in the world who would do the work I'm doing, which is part of why I want to do it. I feel like if there's something important that nobody else in the world would do, then like that's the thing you should do.
Yeah, I think that the question is always like what motivates you. And I think like for some people that would be like a huge burden to carry also because it's not fulfilling for them at all.
If it's because it's not fulfilling.
Yeah, I mean I think like at the end of the day, so I was reading this really like it's a pseudo esoteric book one. Like I had it like downloaded as a PDF. It's actually like not it's not an intellectually stimulating book at all. But, like from time to time, if you want to get reminded about the fact that you have like a big ego, it just reminds you because all it does is talk about your like the ego and whatever. And it talks just before I was like at my hairdresser. By the way, this hair color is not what I wanted. Like I am very.
Are you naturally like jet black?
No, like my natural hair color is sort of
brown.
Brown, but like they made this into this. Like I looked at myself and I was like, oh my god, like it looks nice, but I could also cry.
No,
But then, like
fine.
but like usually girls have it because actually I also need to get some layers and like girls usually have this where they'll like they have a haircut and then they're gonna be like, oh my god, I need like a week to get used to this hair.
No, it looks good.
You think so?
Yeah.
Because I was like,
It's a
oh my
good
god.
look.
But I was walking over here and I was looking at myself. I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna cry, but I'm not gonna cry now.
It's multicolored, right? But it's very light.
It is kind of like it's like it's like a lot of, it's like it's called like air touch.
Okay.
I've never tried it before. It's like this
It's
technique.
like the way so it looks like the same color when you look close, right? But it's hard. Like it's nice because it's like kind of rainbowy from a distance.
Yeah, it's not like
but it's without being like too like it's like mystified. It's like mysterious. It's
You know what it is? It's like an Arab did it, and I feel like I looked at myself and I was like, oh my god. I looked at myself and I was like, yeah, like it's so obvious that like an Arab did my hair. Because it's so funny because I live close to Edgewood Road, right? And that's where all the Arabs live. And as I was walking back home, I saw all those Arab men looking at me, and they were like, "Oh, your hair," and I was like, "Oh my god, like I just look now like really attractive for like Arab men." He gave me this like haircut that like they probably like think is like super hot, but like I think like a European person would have never given me this hair color. But I'm also just overreacting. Yeah. But I forgot what I was talking.
I was just trying to think like if there's any. No, like yeah.
Oh yeah, about like the motivation. So the book is basically about individual consciousness and like collective consciousness. And they were saying you could extrapolate yourself to think about, well, instead of doing things for me, I'm going to do them for like some kind of like collective identity or like some collective concept or like notion or something, such as actually I'm doing this for the world. But then what the book was saying is like you're actually just exchanging one form of ego for another, because think about all the horrific things that have been done in the name of collective like concepts, such as like Nazis or like Islam and like not all Islam, right? Like Sharia law in some respects. And then you have all these people who are like, I'm doing this for other people, but it's like at the end of the day, it's still some form of ego. I'm not saying that's the case with you at all. I'm not saying that's the case with you
but
at all,
actually
yeah.
no, but I think
It's
like
completely unrelated.
no, I don't even. I mean,
Because
all these things that are bad, I feel like are there for a reason. Like.
So you're like a historical materialist like Marx, who was like, oh, feudalism, capitalism had to.
Oh, but I'm even thinking psychologically. Like I almost feel like every mental disorder was evolved on purpose. like even being
Okay.
crazily egotistical. I feel like this was probably like
Like a
evolved.
survival mechanism, or
I actually feel like I don't know. I have a number of psychological theories that I feel like are like not really like mainstream. Like and they're just I don't know. I'm not saying I believe them. I just think they're plausible.
write them down and you're gonna become the next
Yeah,
Freud.
I know. I probably could actually. It's
Really?
really weird how much in psychology cannot be cannot be proven or disproven. It's such a mystery. It's like it is the mystery. Like what happens inside the human brain. It's like
But it's good because you didn't study psychology.
right.
Because like people who study psychology are just. By the way, I have like a lot of testament to this now. Like everybody agrees with me. They're just nuts. And so it's much better that you're coming from like a different discipline and then you're philosophizing about psychology rather than having studied.
Like I'm not
psychology.
convinced like that the brain can't make as many minds as it wants almost. Like and that you only get to know about one of them typically.
Oh, you mean like in terms of like the split like identity disorders?
there's like DID is it called?
Yeah, DID.
No, but I'm not even thinking that.
Dissociative identity disorder. No, you're not. That's
Well,
not
I mean, I feel like that's
like
in the
schizophrenia or.
no. Like actually, no. I think this everybody. So even without a disorder, like I feel like everybody could have this, where it's okay. Like I'm just thinking like I don't think religion makes sense, obviously. I'm
Yeah.
right, and like pretty much like any of them. But and I kind of think like it's too obvious that they don't make sense.
Yeah.
Like they're like, I mean, I could even that's kind of a tangent, but like, I kind of think like okay, so the theory would be that like maybe there's a mind that's above the one we know,
Yeah.
and it will like force things like into the one people know, like I guess for survival reasons, and
Okay.
it's like actually conscious and knows.
Like a Nietzschean, like almost kind of like you have like,
Like-
a higher self, and it's like controlling the ego.
So like yeah, if you have like religious parents, religious family, your whole community and city is religious.
Yeah. The mega mind.
Like that you're as like a child or something.
Yeah.
The mind might very well know this is ridiculous. Like all these religious beliefs are ridiculous, and it'll make you believe them. It'll be like it'll like make you feel Jesus. It'll make you feel like there's a Jesus and that he's just watching over you and cares about you.
I
And
had
you're
like this
just
conversation just today, like
so you fit in, yeah.
where I was like, Jesus was like, I mean, Jews anyways don't believe in Jesus,
Yeah.
Jesus, right? But like, I was like, okay, so you have this guy who like for 30 years of his life was a shepherd, and now everybody like, and like my friend was like, and now everybody prays to him. Like, it's pretty bizarre because you're just like, what qualified a shepherd to be like this mega mind? Just.
You know what really gets
And then everybody
yeah.
walks around with this naked body. Which actually, if you really think about it, it's like super bizarre that people walk around with like a naked body, like a naked human body that's hung up on a cross, like crucified. And everybody walks around with it and it's like, I'm gonna kiss this man like he is. I find that so bizarre about Christianity. Especially like Catholicism, right? Like in Italy is like super, where they walk around with their cross. It's like super bizarre. Like I think like people are like, oh my god.
All the you know what I'm surprised that people accept the fact that like all the religions have a shy god, a shy god, a god who is shy.
Oh, like
all
like you can't see him.
Yeah, like all the religions have a god that is shy, and then it's just like I think like there's just some. Oh, I actually think.
Well, like not Hinduism, right? Sort of. And Buddhism doesn't have a
I
god.
actually think religion could very well like theism.
Yeah.
I actually think the human brain could have been very specifically evolved to be theist.
But like Buddhists are theists, right? Like Taoists, Buddhists, like they don't have a god at all. Like they have Buddha, but it's not.
Yeah, but okay, but that's even relatively recent from an evolutionary standpoint. I'm thinking like
What?
30,000 years ago, right? There wasn't Buddhism or anything.
But like you don't know that like Hinduism, for instance, at large is like the oldest religion in the world.
Right, but I'm guessing that humans have always tried to believe in something, and I just think this was an evolved trait. It's a great way to regulate intelligence and nihilism, and like, or the idea that like, oh, I'm going to raise a family, and there's like something out there that will be proud of me for doing that, like something super important external, like where that'll give you a reason to like, I guess, procreate.
Really?
I mean, Mormons think that they get their own planet only if they have children. Mormons think when they die they get their own planet, but only if they have children. If they don't get their own planet when they die. And it's like, and I think a lot of religious people just think like God wants them to like have kids and raise them well and like make them raise them to believe in God, and like I kind of think it's a way to get the species to propagate. Like, I feel like it was very evolved on purpose. You have to regulate the kind of intelligence humans have. Like like they're gonna just think, what's the point? If you make something so intelligent without being insane,
I see
I don't know if that makes sense.
what you mean, yeah. Like as if like they, I mean,
Self-awareness.
I sort of kind of like think of it as it's the same way that humans, let's say, only have like 5 senses, but like in theory we know that in the world, like in the universe, there's so many things we cannot see, right? I mean, in theory, I find it super bizarre that we can walk around and interact with this reality, given the fact that as humans we have such limited, like access to our senses. You know, like the way that even dogs and like other animals can hear so much better, and like see so much better than we do, and like see more colors, and we're just sort of here like half blind.
I remember Dawkins, like, one of his favorite passages from his own book that he liked to read was no, it was about crystals. I don't know if you've heard this about like is just saying like the way we see crystals is not at all how they actually are, but that this was like how it's useful to see them. Something like how it's like mostly empty space there. It's like if we were seeing them as they really were, it would just look like a lot of empty space.
Yeah.
And like a little, just, I don't know. He had this like, I'm not an expert in crystals, but like
It's kind of like how like the beers like diamonds are like super expensive, but really they're not like expensive at all.
But the fact is that like we see crystals as they're useful to see them in that like, you know, if like it would hurt to bump your head into a big crystal, right? Like that's useful so it's useful to see it as something that you don't want to bump into, right? Like not as what it really is, which is maybe like just a lot of air and like it's but I think his point was like that the eye knows that it's a lot of air. It's not even just about like the eye being limited, but then the brain knows to not let us see it that way.
Oh really?
Because like from an evolutionary standpoint, it's not useful to see it as it is. It's useful to see it as something that's hard and there.
I think that could be true. I don't see anything that disagrees with you. I mean, and like, because I was recently listening to these like lectures.
It also flips the image upside down, right? Like, is the eye? Yeah, that's quite interesting too. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Like I think I see where you're coming from in terms of like I find that very interesting, your perspective. I would have to kind of like read into it a little bit, like to see. I don't think like I personally. I find it interesting because your view certainly is like not contradicting, but is more like opposing what I think, and so but it's actually not like super opposing. I see like I see bridges. I see bridges between the two concepts. But I see where you're coming from, that there is this like mind, brain, mind, heart connection. I don't personally see like I don't really see our mind that split. I have like a more holistic perspective of like the human mind in a way. Like I think like there is a lot of like, kind of like what mathematicians say, like a priori knowledge that is like intuitively available to us, which is probably maybe what you mean with like the eye sees something for what it is, and then people just don't really have access to, or like either they don't have access to like that knowledge, or they somehow misconstrue it, like what you're saying, like they're actively sabotaging their own intelligence, like dumbifying
I think there's
it.
like I mean I guess
because I always thought sort of like, do people really, because you're assuming it from like this is very funny, right? But you're assuming that people look at it and that most people will see that it's empty. But I think the fact of the matter is that most people do not see that it's empty. Like, I think they did like studies on this. For instance, this is gonna sound like a little bit like awful, but like they did studies on. Well, it's actually great, and it's not actually. It's just factual. Like they did these studies as to like when you're doing tests with people who have received very little education, like in, you know, like some kind of countryside, periphery. I don't know, at the end of the world. Like, I don't really know. And you would start talking to them about like solving problems and like how they would like approach solving problems. They're very intelligent, but they will have trouble thinking of things like in a conceptual way. Like education, like, you know, the way that we've received it in the Western like world, let's say, or like school systems, whatever. I mean, in China they also had school systems. any kind of like literal, like, you know, scholarly education, you learn how to look at things like conceptually and more abstract. And so at some point when you're like disgustingly overeducated, that's when you come up with stuff like this. But quite frankly, like the average human person that has not received scholarly education will just not ever think of coming up with concepts like this, where they're like, let me think about the fact that my eye looks at it this way, but actually my mind, you know what I mean? Like all these theories that we come up with, most people really don't think or go about their lives in that way. And that is quite bizarre, because when you're in this bubble, this intellectual bubble, and I've realized this too when I was at LSE, right, which is like this mega intellectual bubble, the concepts that people would come up with, I was like, you don't even realize like how detached you are from like the actual average human experience. Like the actual average human experience for like 99% of, you know, 90% of people outside of Europe, or like Western, I mean, not even like even in Europe, you know, like not everybody is like at these elite institutions. Like they really certainly don't go about their lives thinking that way. They probably don't even have this whole eye that tells them this is empty, and then there is this mind that is like, I need to suppress your intelligence. No, like a lot of people are just not necessarily very intelligent, and that's not a bad thing. I think, like, it's like intelligence is just one measure of humans' like value. Like this kind of like academic intelligence. Like there's so many different other forms of intelligence, right? Like emotional intelligence, like and other ways, right? Not everybody is super like an abstract thinker, and we forget that this is, first of all, not necessarily even just a superior quality, but that a lot of people don't necessarily possess it to think about it that way, or they have not been taught to think that way through like education and scholarly sources. And so they actually do go about their lives seeing the crystal for something that it's not, but it also doesn't really matter, because other things drive them, and like their human experience is about completely like fundamentally different things. Because for us, and I did this test, my friend, he showed it to me, it's called like the heuristics test, which basically categorizes you into different like archetypes, like a little bit like, you know, different Myers-Briggs. And I got like the thing that is like the scientist or something, and it's like the scientist is the one that is tries to derive like truth about things, right? Like we're super like stuffed on what is the truth, fundamental things of how things are, but that is an archetype on its own. And there's a lot of other archetypes out there where people do not go through life thinking in everything that they do, they have to somehow discern the truth of everything. And I've only ever recently had this thought, by the way, as my frontal lobe is developing.
Oh.
Because I was like, before that, I think when your frontal lobe doesn't like, because I'm like still, you know, reaching my mid-20s, and it's like, you don't really realize that the way that you see the world is really not fundamentally how other people see the world. And so you kind of like extrapolate what you think is like, oh, that is human nature. And it's like, really, it's so much more varied. It's crazy. Like when you really think about it, it's like, yeah, not everybody is interested in like.
I mean, there could be so many things that like. I mean, the thing about psychology, like, yeah, is like, there could be so many. Like, it's very plausible. I feel like that our highest intellects are trying their hardest to prevent us from knowing these things. It's like they don't want us to know. Like not like schizophrenia. But like.
No, I think it's true, because like
like this is what we're really not supposed to discover.
No, I think like I had this even today when I was talking to my friend about like God, because I said to him, because he was like, oh, we don't know who God is, let's say, and then I said to him, well, I think like asking who God is just like the wrong question, because for even like from a theology point of view, right? Because if I'm religious and I look at it from a theology point of view, I mean that would assume that there is one mind. Like asking who is a reference to an identity, it's a reference to like a singular, you know, sort of like entity, like somebody who identifies with one mind. But if like in theology even, the idea is that God isn't, let's say, in everybody, and everybody's fundamentally so different, it cannot be like a one, like encompassing thing. And I think that is the problem that is for us so hard to conceive, is that it's kind of like in quantum physics, where you have two different things happen at the same time. Like the photon could be a string, but it also, you know, could just be a photon. Like it doesn't have to be a string, and like we cannot comprehend that.
Even more like, kind of like, if it could be forbidden knowledge, right, would be like the continuum of consciousness through sleep. Like, I mean, okay.
So now you're going back to Adam and Eve. You're like, so actually you end up back where the Bible started. You're like, well, there is this forbidden knowledge of the
Oh.
apple, and somebody we're not allowed to bite into it. So it's like very actually. So although you're a theist, you're ending. You're ending where the Bible starts.
I guess. Yeah. Well,
That's
sure.
very
No, I
funny.
think religion does come from like, I guess like the tenets of psychology a little bit, maybe. Like,
So what do you think is like the forbidden fruit? Like the
I think
red
just one
apple.
example of what could be like maybe forbidden knowledge is like that you kind of die when you go to sleep. Like, what? Okay, so I don't know.
But that's nice in a way because I don't think that's like. Do you think that that's like problematic?
Well, yeah, because if you think like tomorrow, yes, I believe someone will wake up that thinks it's me, but it's not really me, because like my consciousness actually ends when I go to sleep, and then just like my body just creates a new consciousness and it has memories, so it's not really me anymore. And so like you might just spend all your money. Because you might blow all your savings on a big party tonight. Because you're like, the next person who wakes up with that debt is some other schmuck.
Some people do think that way, where they're like, "Oh, I'm leaving this problem to like future me."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I try not to schedule things because I don't, because like, I try not to schedule things because it's like, I don't know, just like, I know that future me will resent, like, being mandated.
Yeah.
Restricted, like, by past me. Uh,
Well, I think like what you're saying certainly fits into the idea that some people have about the idea that we have like different like afterlives, or like you get reincarnated, or
Actually, the afterlife, I feel bad trying to have it. Like, if people believe in an afterlife, it's like, even if it's bullshit, they should probably. Like, if they can believe something, they probably should.
I find it like, I mean, I had this conversation the other day with my flatmate. He's from Pakistan, and so he was raised Muslim. I mean, he's not Muslim, but he's an atheist. But anyway, everybody there has to be Muslim, right? Like, actually, I saw his passport and it says religion Islam, and I was like, wait, so your religion is in your passport? And he was like, yeah. And you have no choice? He was like, no, it's just they just put it there. Really funny. I didn't know that. And so we were talking, and he was like, yeah, I mean, Islam is fundamentally about the afterlife, right? Like, Islam is about the fact that this is not real life, and real life is beginning in the afterlife. And then I said to him, Judaism is the other way around. Like, Judaism does not really believe in afterlife. Like, Judaism is all about this life. And also, like, in Judaism, there is no omnipotent God or anything. Like, it's all about, like, how you make your actions in this life, and there is no afterlife. Like, the contemporary assumption is you just kind of die and that's it. Like, there's no, I mean, there are ideas of heaven, but like it's not that popular anymore to think of that. So for me, it's bizarre when people are like religious and they tell me about the afterlife. I'm like, how can you be religious and actually think, like, with scientific knowledge, that there's some sort of afterlife, and like go about your day thinking that everything you do contributes to like some hypothetical, I mean, like, that's like some weird mental gymnastics you must be like doing. Like, even like, for instance, the fact that you think about like some future version of yourself, I'm like, I'm not even thinking that far. Like, that is so complex.
Yeah. I mean, I can just imagine a lot of people really need to believe it, like they actually need to.
They just don't want to be in the present moment. Like, anybody who doesn't want to be in the present moment somehow has to like, it's kind of like they do like with PTSD. It's like detachment, like ultimate detachment, or like, what is it called when you're like, not just like detaching, but I forget about people when they have PTSD and they're like triggered, they kind of like, they're not really there anymore.
I would suspect maybe there's some people, it's something about them where if you somehow persuaded them there was no afterlife, they would just get depressed, stay in bed all the time, and then eventually come to a new belief in an afterlife. That they would actually require it. Really?
I think like the idea is just that like I look at this from a really different perspective. I think people are like, I mean, like, because I love existentialist philosophy, right? And like existentialist philosophy is more about like the fact that if you had to deal with reality as it is, and that's how like nihilism, that is the problem of nihilism, right? Is that if you actually thought about the fact that we're like on this floating rock in the universe where there's like nothing, and you're just living this daily life, day in and out, thinking there's something you have to get done and like achieve, and like it's so bizarre. And people just can't deal with this. Like, that is the truth of it, actually. I mean, that is the truth of it, is that there is no meaning to anything. And that is not a, from an existentialist point of view, that's
no,
not a problem.
I know you quoted Camus, I think, right? Or you
Yeah.
referenced Camus in your thing. Like, that's always my favorite philosopher.
Yeah, there's no
like, I sort of
problem with the
some-
fact
yeah.
that there is no meaning, but can most people deal with the fact that there is no meaning? Because, again, they would have to then look at their own lives and think like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? It's so useless. And then the capitalist machine wouldn't work anymore, because it's like, how do you want to motivate people to do random ass shit that needs to get done if they don't have the same incentive structures from back in the day? Because maybe back in the day, like, societies were much smaller, and so when you were doing something, you were like, well, I'm doing this for my mom, I'm doing this for, I'm gathering this wood for me tonight so we can have some food. But like, when you're contributing to the economy nowadays, like, how can you actually feel like you're having, you sort of have purpose for what you're doing? Like, somehow there needs to be kind of vehicle that makes you believe your impact, like, even though it's ridiculous because everything has an impact, right? Like, even the smallest thing that you do has an impact. That's like the whole thing with time travel that they always talk about, right? Like, if you were to go back in time and you like change like a few small things, would really impact like the whole way the history would go about. And I always think about like, like, everything does have like an impact, but most people just don't realize this, and so they need some, it's basically they're doing this really weird mental gymnastics that they wouldn't even have to do. Most people just don't want to face the truth of how things are, even though it's much more beautiful. Like, it's kind of like a mathematical formula. Like, the truth of it is so much more nicer, but you're putting all this other stuff there that's like so unnecessary. I think people just can't appreciate beauty in some way. Like, it sounds bizarre, but
No, they don't. Right? Like, I mean, everything. Yeah, I guess it's.
It's like, why don't you just appreciate the universe as is? Why do you need to like put all these like other fluff on it? It's just. Is it the way it is not enough? Like, why do you have to add? And I mean, when you take shrooms or like acid, I don't know if you've.
I love.
Yeah, like 2 weeks ago I also took shrooms. Not like 3 weeks ago. Yeah, I was on shrooms as well.
Have you done acid?
Yeah. Like, not like mega. Like, I didn't take enough to be like super hallucinating. This time when I took shrooms, I did take enough to be hallucinating, but it was not. I saw like lots of like Greek sculptures. It was random. But I did think, like, at that point, when you take acid, you kind of, personally, when I had acid, I had this experience that everything is sort of good as is. Like, you don't really, like, for instance, even, like, when you're, like, on psychedelics, I don't really have the desire to eat or drink anything in particular. You're just kind of like, yeah, everything is kind of good the way it is now, and, like, there's nothing that needs to be, like, taken away or, like, added to this experience for this to be, like, a nice experience, in a way. And I think about that a lot. Like, this kind of really impacted me because I'm like, fundamentally, the universe is like, everything is good as is. Like, if you look at it plainly, it's like, it's good the way it is. It's not normative. It's not good or bad. It's just is. And that is beautiful too. And, because for instance, I wrote my master's thesis on aesthetics. And Nietzsche has this really nice quote that's like, if you kill a butterfly, that's like murder. But if you kill a cockroach, then you're like a hero, And he was saying this because like aesthetics has like morality, but fundamentally aesthetics is not.
Do you think aesthetics derives from harmful and harmlessness? I mean, I guess the roach probably spreads more diseases than a butterfly and things like that. Maybe that's why it looks ugly. And maybe butterflies, regardless of their colors or whatever, if they spread more diseases, we might be horrified by their colors and not things, and they might. Like, maybe just evolved? Yeah.
I don't know, because in the end of it, like, if you think about, like, these frogs that they always see in the tropical forest,
nice.
like, the ones that, like, are super, like, colorful or super poisonous.
Interesting.
And I don't think cockroaches, like... I mean, cockroaches are, like, attracted by trash, I guess, but, like, I don't think cockroaches themselves carry... I don't think they're, like, disease.
I don't know.
Because, like, in Croatia and, like, other countries, like, cockroaches are super common.
Well, I think I've heard that babies can, like, in some countries that have, like, this problem, they inhaling, like, the feces of roaches, makes babies sick. They can inhale it, and it's
crazy.
Like, I don't know. Yeah,
that's gross.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, no.
I didn't know that. Yeah, it could be where, like, it could be very well that's the case. But yeah, I kind of, at the end of it, I kind of think like people don't want to see that things are good as they are, and that is beautiful too. That nothingness can be beautiful in a way, or just like aesthetics is not necessarily normative. I don't know. And so they make up like some other thing. Because like even the idea that like heaven is amazing, I'm like, you have no idea what it is. And yet you're convincing yourself that it's amazing. And I find that that's what I don't understand about religious people, like in, outside of like my form of Judaism. And I'm not even very, like, I don't really read the Torah or anything.
It's the whole point, is to...
I don't get it. Like, I just don't understand, like, how can you be so excited about something that you have no idea what it is? Whereas the universe here is already here. Like, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can see it.
The belief is manufactured for the purpose of believing in something amazing. Thus, it has to be amazing. Otherwise, why would the belief even get manufactured?
But it's bizarre because, like, for instance, in other kind of, like, systems of thought, right? And, like, that's, like, the whole thing about, like, psychedelics is that, like, you take them and you kind of see things how they are. And you see them how they are, and you're like, this is great. Like, there's no need of believing in anything because you're not really... All you're doing is seeing things. You're not starting to believe in anything new. Like, I don't think anybody comes out of, like, acid as, like, now I know heaven is, like, the psychedelic. Like, I saw it on my psychedelic trip. I've never heard anybody be like, and then I saw heaven, It's like, you see the world as it is. You're not fundamentally any different. But it's just that now you have, like, access to the fact that, yeah, it's great the way it is. Like, there is nothing... I think, like, once you have had, like, taken acid, you can extrapolate that mindset into your sober mindset so many times. Like, you could also be sitting here and be like, yeah, if I was on acid right now, I would be, like, super, like, great temperature, it's, like, nothing too hot, like, well-fed, like, this is great. Like, and you go through life after the, like, psychedelic experiences just like that. And, like, all the mental gymnastics believing in something that you cannot, like, experience becomes so irrelevant. Because you're like, well, I'm, like, the subject of the experience, and I think it's a great experience, so why are you creating, like, a hypothetical of an experience that is, like, an illusion? Nietzsche did the great thought experiments on no, not Nietzsche, Nozick. So it's called, like, the happiness machine or something, and they use this in economics sometimes, where it's basically, like, you're plugged into a machine, and maybe I should write about this, but, like, because I used to do this in uni, but, like, you're plugged into a machine, and you're having all these amazing memories, like, happy life, and at some point, you sort of wake up and realize that none of these things were real that you experienced. Would that somehow impact the value of that experience, like, and how much it's worth? And that is, like, I don't remember why he did this. I think this was about, like, economics and, like, the value of things, like, whether, like, but yeah, essentially, it's, like, bizarre because I think I would wake up and be like, whoa, none of this was real. That was actually not worth, like, that was not worth anything at all. And I think that you can extrapolate this with heaven, where you're like, okay, so you're lying here thinking about all these, like, illusionary things about you'll never actually ever experience, because quite frankly, after you die, you're just dead, right? And you don't really realize the fact that this has no value at all. That is so bizarre to me. I mean, Nozick's thought experiment is a really great way of looking at that. He must have definitely taken some acid or something. I find that, like, or for instance, you can even argue this from a different perspective. So Aldous Huxley, right, who wrote, what was it, Brave New World? He has another book, which is also a very interesting book, where he talks about his acid experience. And he goes, this entire book is just about him describing himself on acid, and, like, psychoanalyzing it. And he was like, the reason for why when you're on acid, you're like, wow, everything is so bright and colorful, and he was basically wondering, why do colors have such a strong impact on us? And at the end of the day, he kind of says, oh, they remind us of this primordial Garden of Eden that we've sort of been in, and we feel the strong connection to returning to that place. And so, like, when we see colors very vividly, it reminds us of this luscious beauty or whatever of nature, of paradise. So you can even argue the other way around from, like, a more religious perspective, which I think is also interesting. Like, I'm not, like, against or for any of them, but yeah, even, like, with Aldous Huxley being like, well, why am I so attracted when things are, like, super colorful? Like, what is it that, like, makes my brain go, wow? Garden of Eden? Like, some primordial... like, is it
fruit.
Really hypothetical?
Fruit is colorful, and fruit is, like, healthy. That's where we're attracted to color. Like we're probably, like, trained to spot, like, like, our ancestors were trained to spot an apple in a tree, and it's, like, a really special thing or something. Yeah,
like when things are ripe, let's say, or, like, they're, like, nutritious, or...
Actually, there's studies on this. Like, colorful foods are like there's a benefit to trying to just eat colorful foods, like they just have things, antioxidants, whatever, and like you can actually just, if you don't know anything about nutrition, just trying to eat color is actually like something you can go by, and it would help you.
That's very interesting. But then again, it goes back to the fact that it's good as is. Like, if you just listen to your own like natural instincts, which would tell you to eat like more colorful things, because it's sort of, you were taught, like your evolution sort of like taught you to pick these kind of like things over others.
And then
why are you making these mental gymnastics about creating like a Garden of Eden? And by the way, I used to be super into shamanism, and like this whole thing, I've read so much into it, like what people are like in the spirit world, and I think that it has like super like use cases.
Yeah, I just like, I don't know, just trying to reverse engineer like, right, these things, like, so you're thinking like, if the brain, like, if the brain or the mind makes color good,
Yeah.
then you're going to like see color in a tree, you'll go look at it, you'll go close to it, and you'll realize it's a blueberry,
Yeah.
right? But then in order to make you do that, you might also just have to like love a painting that has lots of color in it.
Yeah.
Like they're just symptoms of the same kind of thing.
They are, I think, symptoms of the same thing. By the way, you can pick blackberries in Hyde Park. I do it all the time.
Oh, yeah? Oh.
Yeah, they have a bunch of bushes, like here, like right, like on the side of the park, they have a lot of bushes, and every time I go for a run, at the end of it, I'm always like, I'm gonna reward myself with picking blackberries. They're also ripe at this time of year.
Yeah,
it's pretty nice actually.
Hyde Park's nice. Yeah, I hang out there sometimes.
Yeah.
You like West London? That's pretty.
It's
got, people are nicer. Kind of, I hate to admit it, they're not as like trendy in theory.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. That's a stereotype.
I'm moving out of my room, and then I'm gonna look for a new room. And I was thinking if I'm gonna stay in this area.
But
it
is neat here. Like, it's funny. I ran this experiment because I was really curious, where I would just like kind of just picnic by myself in a park and put a sign pretending I was home. Like, this is an experiment I ran. I want to try it in East London and West London, and in Hyde Park, people were giving me lots of money.
Really?
Yeah, and in any park in East London, nothing. Or even like any. Oh, and I did another experiment. I did was I asked restaurants. I told restaurants I was homeless. I just really wanted to test this difference between East and West London. And so like I would tell restaurants I was homeless and ask if they had any like food that they would give me. And West London, like, insane, like gourmet meals. Like, they're just like prepare them for me and box them and give them to me, like crazy. East London, nothing. Like, in theory, people are maybe nicer in West London, but
they are nicer, but the rent here is also like much more expensive.
I think it's a privilege thing. I think that I don't know. I'm kind of thinking that because I feel like there's like privilege guilt in West London. This is like,
I don't know. I love living in West London, but I don't get anything done here, and I work from home, and it is like it's so I've been like I've been pretty productive, but I'm not like productive on a daily basis. Like, if I want to get something done, I have to go somewhere else. Like, I have to go to the library in the city or something. Like, here, you just don't get things done. Like, this is not a get things done area.
That makes sense. Probably because, especially for like maybe entrepreneurs, it's not as. So many people here, they just have jobs and they just go to their job.
Yeah, you just go to your job. Like, people here are not like even like with because I live in a house, right? With like we have like flatmates. My flatmates, and like I love them a lot, but it's like I come home and they will just be like on their couch scrolling like to the end of the day, and they earn well.
But they have jobs. They don't need to do anything else.
But that's like the thing. Like they have their jobs, but also like they earn well enough to live in like. And I mean, like, to be honest, I mean they're a bit older than me, and they earn like slightly more than me. So for them, maybe like the rent is not like that high. But like for me, I was like, I'm gonna move out because like my rent, I feel like the rent is too expensive for me that I'm paying, so I want to move somewhere cheaper so I can use the money for other things. But yeah, I can sort of see them, like, I call this kind of like a degeneration, like a degeneration of like the upper middle class, where like you're super comfortable, and because you're so comfortable, you become complacent and you don't realize your time is like valuable anymore. You know, like you don't really. like you just kind of like finish your job and you go home and you
Jobs-
scroll
I-
and you're like hanging out.
Jobs crush spirits. I mean, I feel like that's a big scam. Like,
I
well,
don't know if they do because, for instance, I have a job, but I do like a bunch of things outside of my job. Like even today, I was writing like an email from a friend of mine who has a business in Asia, and like he just wanted me to like rewrite the email for his English, like the English or whatever, and like I just do like a bunch of like side quests. But I think like it's just like
it doesn't have to, but you have to take the right approach to it. Like, I think to maintain your spirit through like a
you have
job.
to just I mean either you have a blog or like you have like like an organization or like you have other things that drive you, but. Yeah, I'm like, like, I find it bizarre. Like, I live in this house with, like, 3 people. They're all really educated. They're also, I would say, like, fairly, like, intelligent. They also went to good unis, like, did interesting degrees, and they have well-paying jobs, and then they kind of come home, and all they do is, like, scroll on the internet. Yeah, it's like...
No, but, like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, I like, when I was young, I deliberately took bad jobs that would pay me much less than I could earn doing other things just to see what they were like.
Yeah, I've done that too.
Yeah, like I worked in the parking lots of Universal Studios, the theme park, where like Disneyland kind of thing, in Hollywood. Of course, all my coworkers were miserable. I mean, partly because I was doing it by choice, because I was able to make like 6 times as much money as a database engineer.
Yeah.
But so my coworkers hated this job. They were the most miserable people. I felt so bad for them. But I like came to work as if it was a game. Like, how many different people from how many different countries could I talk to? Or they like asked me for directions around the theme park, and like I went to it like it was a game. Like almost like like imagine Sisyphus happy.
Yeah.
Right? Like that. Maybe he doesn't mind rolling the rocks up the hill. Like for them, like they hated rolling the rocks up the hill. But like for me, I was like, oh, I'm gonna turn into like a fun game and like.
I had like a similar experience. I worked in a theater, like a really rundown theater, like as a waitress and a bartender. Even though I literally just before, like the summer before that, I was like in an investment bank doing an internship, and I was the only person I think who's ever worked there with like that kind of background, kind of like you, and everybody there was just so depressed, and like they were all like, they were all having like drug problems as well, like they were all high on their shift the whole time, and I was like, this is so bizarre, and like they were all, reaffirming to each other that their drug use is good. So basically, there was this one guy who was like, he was making a short film, and he studied psychology, but he hated it. So now he was wanting to do short films. But he also became a cook later on, like at that venue. And he was like super stressed about this and that, and like he was like, I'm gonna go smoke a joint. And I was like, well, maybe, I said to him that I used to be a massive stoner, and I said to him, I don't think like solving, a joint is gonna solve your problems. Maybe you should just grab sleep like early and like I don't know, wake up in the morning and eat some good food or something. He was like, and then my manager came and she was like, no, why are you like provoking him? And I was like, this is provocation to tell people to like not take drugs, like what the fuck? And she was like, well, but you're like provoking him, like you're trying to like destabilize him. I'm like, bro, I'm just trying to have a fucking genuine conversation with them. And the fact that like you think that is a provocation is bizarre. Like that is the extent of how miserable people are. Like you're trying to talk to someone like genuinely, and people are like, that is too much. And I'm like, because for them it's like they have no other way of dealing with it, right? Like they have no out. Whereas for me, I always knew, well, I'm doing this for like a month, and then like I'm leaving, or like I'm gonna have like a nice job in finance next year. Right. So I could have this conversation with them where I was like coming from the outside in, talking to them. But like for them that was super, like when I would start doing that, they would get super irritated and be like, we don't want to hear about this. Like they actually enjoyed being miserable. And like Sisyphus, like imagine Sisyphus happy is like a bit different because he finds like meaning and meaninglessness. But these people, like
we all do. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, but it's like I don't even think that they find meaninglessness. They find meaning in. Yeah, they also find meaninglessness, but like it's a completely without the awareness. Like if you X'd out the awareness of like the meaninglessness. And by the way, I was at that bar the other like week, and like there's still like half of those people still work there. And that was like 2 years ago that I was there, and I was like, I can't believe that these people still work here. Yeah. And I was like, you get paid minimum, you get paid like London living wage. It's like £11 an hour, and like I remember when I would talk to them, and a lot of them are like artists or like they have like a band or something, and I'm like, so these 2 years, like did you never think like, either I'm gonna make it, or like drop everything to do this, or like, how can you be so comfortable being here? I don't really
Other people get
understand.
stuck. Now I've seen people in minimum wage jobs for 30 years. The same minimum wage job, the exact same one.
It's bizarre. Like, how can you go through life?
Even at the parking lots where I worked, some people they were there for like 30 years, and working in the parking lot of that place.
But that's what I'm trying to tell you. That's what I'm trying to tell you when you're talking about like the mind and like the intelligence and like somehow it's like, really, do you think that these people like have? It sounds really awful, but like, do you really think that these people sit there and think like they do this a whole mental gymnastics of like convincing themselves that like,
Well, they why not? Like, I mean, objectively, is being the president of the United States more meaningful than being a janitor? I mean, sure.
no, you're in a different rat race, but you're still in a rat race of some sort.
I mean, you're also just gonna die in 50 years anyway. Like it's just you're just like finding a purpose until you die. Like,
Yeah, I mean, but that's essentially also what you do, what I do, right? Like even like us writing about governance or thinking about governance is like, well, Albert Einstein already predicted humans are gonna wipe each other out. Like, like we're gonna be the reason for why we're gonna die to some degree. And I think he's not too wrong. I think Elon Musk has clocked that, and that's why Elon Musk is trying to send us on to another planet because he's like,
also,
we're gonna kill each
I mean,
other.
I don't know. Yeah. Philosophy is rough because I don't know that people are supposed to understand it. Like, and like it might be harmful to understand, right? Like, but.
Well, I think like people say, like if you read philosophy, people say it's never actually about. It's not about actually like finding any truth. It's just about the seeking.
Oh yeah. Oh, discovery of limits. I feel like is so fundamental to life. I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like.
So like I think there's this other saying quote that I wrote down in my notebook when I listened to lectures. It was something that humans still have to realize is that to understand the world, there's something beyond reason that we will never be able to like understand through reason. Because like the whole idea through like like in STEM is that like you can explain the world through reason.
What can't we really like? What could really not be explained through reason?
Yeah,
Like,
well,
no, like,
and they're saying like the biggest thing that humans still have to yet to understand is why they're like the human world cannot be explained through reason alone. Like, what is the purpose of that?
but actually,
And
is
I
there
was
anything?
like, that was like, wow, that's crazy because
Can you think of an example of something that you think can't be explained through reason?
I think many things cannot be explained like through reason. Human nature cannot be explained through reason alone. I think consciousness cannot necessarily be explained through reason alone. I mean, even I think Mark Zuckerberg is coming to this slowly because there's this whole trend right where they're like, oh, he's turning human. Where he was saying like, oh, there's people in Silicon Valley that like want to upload your mind, like to like a chip or something, like kind of like Neuralink. And he was saying, well, the whole point about humans is like that they're sort of like active,
I could
and it's
probably
not just about their mind,
Uh,
And I was like, damn, Mark Zuckerberg, like you go. Like he understood also at some point, and he's like
he's very smart, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Like
he's
I
like
mean,
super tech mobile.
I mean, yeah.
And he understands like, well, and it's so funny because essentially, yeah, he created like a social network. That was his whole thing. And he even has understood that humans are not. It's not just about their minds. Like like the mind of a human being is just one part of a human being.
You know, like a horrible thing that I probably think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just like, I think like someone like Zuckerberg honestly could theoretically is like technically human, right? But like
he's a lizard, really.
No, but almost sort of a different species in that like this is horrible, but I kind of feel like it's very plausible that like compared to your average person, like if you take an average person and like take the difference between an average person and a 2-year-old, as an average adult and an average 2-year-old, I kind of feel like that's like maybe the difference between Zuckerberg and an average person. That like average people are like 2 years old in mental capacity compared to someone like Mark Zuckerberg. Like, which sounds like crazy extreme. It's a hard thing to realize. Like it would take you some time to I think it takes a lot of time to realize that, like a lot. It's really hard to realize that.
Yeah.
Humans aren't that smart.
Yeah, that's what that was like what I was reiterating
Right.
a lot of the time in our conversation, right? That like most people, I mean I'm saying this by the way also because not because I think that I'm smarter than anybody at all. I think like I'm super like
You don't believe
stupid.
that. Come on.
Hmm?
You don't think that.
What?
I call BS.
What do you
I
mean?
think you think you're smarter than like at least 98, maybe 99 point something % of people.
No, no. I think that like I just like to do mental gymnastics for things nobody really cares about.
I don't believe you. I think you think you're at least well deep into the top like 1% of human intelligence, and that you're very just, and that you think it's strategic to be modest about it. Just what I was poking fun at in your like in the message I sent. Because you don't want to be obnoxious. Yeah, no, you just like you don't want to be obnoxious, right? And so, like I don't know. It's
No,
like,
I think from this perspective that I have been given for like my background, like I think the fact that I'm white and privileged and I've been given like elitist education, I've exactly achieved the level of like trained intelligence that I should have achieved with all the privileges that I've been given in life. And also, for instance, the fact that I also think that a lot of Jews are weirdly like, you know, like a lot of Jews are weirdly like intelligent.
yeah.
Right? Like there's this whole thing. And so I think the fact that my family from my mom's side is like super Jewish, I think maybe that plays into it like genetically somehow. I don't necessarily would attribute it to myself at all because for instance I think my brother is mega intelligent. Like my brother is like he does like right he I think you met him, right? Like he codes like algorithms for like high frequency trading. He's like super.
Oh, he was there last night. Oh.
Yeah, he was there as well. He's like super intelligent. I look up to him a lot because he's like somebody who understands things really quickly, and he's like super mathematical. Like he can see patterns and things like immediately, right? Whereas for me, I'm like, and I have like, for instance, other friends of mine that did my degree with me, and when I look at how they think, I'm just like in awe. Like I'm like, wow, like the way that you think, I could never think that way. And so I think if anything, I have like when I compare myself to those people, I definitely feel so inferior because the way that they think is so beautiful and elegant. Like
What? So what are they good at? Like
I think like they are good at. Maybe there's also like a male thing a lot of the time.
I feel like I kind of think there's only two kinds of intelligence that matter really. and like the people who are impressive at stuff like math and chess and whatever, they don't have the. That doesn't really mean that it's not part of the two that matter.
well, for instance, with my friend that studied, like he studied law in Oxford, and he did my postgrad with me now, and he writes like incredible like his way of like thinking, what is it called, like consistently and like in structures and like I'm a bit more all over the place. My thinking is very like I pull things together from like. You know, even my writing is sort of like, oh, I read this, and then I read that, and now I'm making up something about that. You know, it's like super, like, I go into like deep dives, I pull things here and there from like random places, and I put them together. But it's like, what I lack is like this more like structuralist thinking of like going, like about the way that other people think about like a really small detail, and like the world suddenly like unfolds in that detail. Well, you know, like the way that people are like, you know, I mean, about Elon Musk, I think about him all the time, but like the way that he's like engineering things. I mean, how detail oriented do you have to be, right? And like, I could never like think myself that like, I'll be like super weird about semantics, sure. Like semantics is just I mean, those people really build like tangible things. I don't know what I have built that it's like tangible at all. I mean, I still want to write a book. that was my recent thing. I was like, oh, I think I'm going to write a book on political philosophy. I think I'm going to write a book on philosophy, but it's not like...
You really want to like have moments where you're like maybe like at that level if you think you haven't been there yet, like of being like that deep into detail, like maybe Elon Musk might be. Maybe I don't know. I mean, they're theoretically drugs. I think maybe they're probably drugs on thinking. Like okay, I kind of think like. Combining like Vyvanse or Elevance, it's like an ADHD medication, or like any of the ADHD medications with LSD, with acid.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. I've done it occasionally. I do it occasionally.
Oh my god.
But you can invent a car.
Really?
Yeah, you can just like you can do that. Like you can yeah.
I find that like so crazy because I'm like not. I can envision things quite well. Like in other regards, but when it comes to this kind of stuff, I'm like, whoa, like I would be so like lost. Like, sure, you can ask me to design a state. I think I could do that quite well. Like if you give me enough time.
Design like a state, like a nation.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm very like that's like something that comes very natural to me.
Okay.
Like,
All right, what would you
laws.
do that's most different than what's contemporary?
Different than what's contemporary.
Well, if you're gonna design a nation, right, you're gonna make it better, right? So you're not just gonna copy. Or you would just copy things.
Well, I think like first I would think about like who the people are that are gonna live in that nation. I mean, it's not like you're not like you know what I mean? Because like creating a nation is such a bizarre concept. Like actually, I mean, if you think about how nations were created in the past, it's like you had one person that was just like, I'm gonna cover this territory, and now everybody's gonna listen to what I had to say. And this kind of became nations, how we know them today, and they've been working pretty well. And like then you sort of had like the most recent nations, sort of I guess like Israel, where they were like, okay, we have these Jews, and we have to create like a space for them, and it was like very different kind of way of thinking about it. I don't think I could come up with a nation like on its own. I think it has to be like context dependent. That is like the whole problem with philosophy and political philosophy, is that you have like abstract ideas and they have to be applied somehow. It's one thing to talk about oughts, and it's another thing to talk about isms. I mean, that's also a common fallacy, right? To think like oughts and is the same. Philosophy is like a lot of oughts, and it's also a lot of is, but it's the bridge between the two is like a thing that's really hard.
Okay, so you're thinking like, is that tied to like a nation, like governing a governance of culture?
I think like
or like
so the thing is, I think I'm very good at thinking about oughts, but designing a nation in reality is fundamentally more about isms. Like, who are the people? What is the context?
See, I think a lot about almost like optimization engines. If I was
Optimization.
like,
This is a very technocratic perspective.
no, but even engines to optimize maybe social authority, like I don't believe in like you can't do I hate like blockchain governance, like the way that it's done so far. Like I think it's just ridiculous. I think it's like
I think but there's an incentive to not make it efficient, because it's like they don't actually want a lot of people to like, they don't want everybody, because like about 3 people that are so cliquey, they don't want like normal people to join. Like they don't actually want other, mass adoption.
But they also like, I think there's some ego bruise to it being like a circle jerk, which other like if you get like successful crypto people alone in a room together, they'll like say, yeah, this is just a big circle jerk. It's just like it doesn't connect to anything. It's just us like just going around circles with each other. It's just bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, but I think like they know this and it bruises their ego.
Yeah, exactly. Like they don't have a real incentive to change it at all.
No, they do. Really? They're just afraid. Like, also they're like, I do think you have to merge like a lot of political science with like a lot of in politics with like, I guess the whole crypto world, right? And they're both hostile to each other. Like, I mean, like the political world is hostile to like this whole blockchain and crypto stuff, and like people who are like into political science and politics, whatever, right? And then on the other side, like they're also hostile. Like they're and it's like merging them, I think, is potentially important, but like difficult, because they're like very much in their own lexicon, and it's just ridiculous. Like,
yeah, but I think kind of like about like the other kind of technologies like Facebook, it really happened so naturally that it became this. There was just access. It was well designed. Like the whole point of it was that it was designed to be accessed by everybody. Blockchain was never designed to be accessed by everybody. I think blockchain was just fundamentally designed for criminals, and that's why it's used by criminals mostly. And it's quite an effective way of being used by criminals. And personally, I think
disagree.
the problem.
I do think wait, is that what did it? Yeah. That might have gotten it. Is that what got it from 2 billion? I remember because I started buying Bitcoin. The market cap was 2 billion. And I was thinking the darknet carried it from there. Like I think that's what got it from like 2 billion to like 100 billion.
I I think if I was going to design a nation, I'd love to design like the darknet nation. The nation that is like the hidden nation.
Oh, the hidden.
The hidden nation,
It's
like
amazing that every country alcohol is legal. I think. I mean,
Yeah.
or right, and LSD isn't legal in any country. It's amazing. I was even just thinking about like I know some really like kind of like these like I know a state senator in San Francisco. He's awesome. He's like compared to any other American politician, and like I can totally imagine him enjoying LSD, even with like, and maybe even with some other politicians who are similar to him, maybe even in the state legislature or the Bay Area or whatever, and like, but like. They can so easily go out to a bar after, like, they can leave the Capitol, walk like across the street, go to a bar, and they do this. They'll drink together, and they're like legislators, and they'll drink beers together, but they can't like go do like microdose acid together. Like they would like it would just be a scandal, right? And it's like, how does that affect legislation? I mean, I think that it really does. I don't know. I was like, I had.
They do like that. You know, we look at it from such a even tame perspective because. I mean, this is not even just conspiracies, right? But like in terms of like all these pedophile rings and like a lot of like human trafficking is done by like politicians. I know this because if you look at like interviews from people who were in like human trafficking rings, a lot of them say that it's really high-ranking politicians that are like engaged in them. And so I think what you really need is like a nation not for like sounds bizarre, like not a nation for like people that are like operating like as citizens in like the world that we know here, but you really need like a nation for like the dark web. And that's essentially what's the problem with like why like governance on blockchain is so hard to create, because essentially you have to create like a governance structure for people who hate governance, and you have to create a governance structure for people who want to avoid it, and people who actively chose to engage in the most inconvenient ways possible just to like avoid dealing with politics. And these are the type of people that you have to govern. In my degree, we did a really interesting degree that's called like the economics of crime, and how like criminals like make rational choices, and they do make really rational choices. Like they're totally rational actors. But yeah, you have to deal with like a just completely different caliber of people that are like. Because like it's funny because in political philosophy people assume all we have to say to nature makes people like egotistical and they're self-centered, and somehow we end up in this super well-governed democracies. Like no, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like you have two governance systems. You have one for people who are like good-natured and they live here and they're like citizens of Britain or Germany and whatever. And then you have citizens of like the dark world where like people are just lawless and criminals, and you have all these weird organizations that are like trafficking people, and who governs those people? Nobody governs those people. They govern themselves and their structures, and these people are operating mainly on blockchain for like various purposes, like money laundering and whatever and whatnot. So like, when you have to think about how would you govern these people, you just have to take a completely different approach. And I think unless you understand a little bit about how people like that operate, nobody who comes from like a posh politics background will understand how to like govern people like that. Like you have to be like, it sounds ridiculous, but I think you have to have some kind of either background or like experience or like grew up in an area where you sort of understand how lawlessness operates. And this is very interesting because I think lawlessness is super interesting to me. Like as I said, my flatmate is from Pakistan, and one of the guys that I'm seeing, like that I'm really good friends with also, like he's also from Pakistan, but like closer to Afghanistan. And we talk to them about, what life is like in the absence of like institutions. I mean, that's sort of, I think, like how you have to imagine. I don't think it's state of nature where it's like everybody kills everybody, Although that's a lot of the time what people do in Pakistan. In fact, actually, I know this from people who grew up there. It's like that is kind of like what you deal with, but like in a really weirdly intangible way, where like on blockchain you can't really see people kill each other, but that certainly happens. Super common. It's just like you just have to be like there to
I'm not sure. What do you mean by kill? Like literally kill, or like some kind of metaphor?
No, like it's really like I mean, murder is such a common. Like I think people don't realize this. Like if you actually study, like for instance, by the way, like last week when I was at the Psytrance event, I was like, we basically met these two Americans, and they were like, why don't you come up like to our hotel, like whatever. So I called them, like me and my friend. We were like, they were super nice. They were like, oh, we were like, the event ended. What are you guys doing? And they were like, we're in our hotel. And we're like, okay, well, we're gonna join, right? So I'm in their room and we're just like talking to them, and we're like, so what do you guys do? And they're like, oh, we work for the U.S. government. We were like, what? Because they were like, yeah, we were both in the Air Force before, and now they work in like the government, where they said if you're like a U.S. citizen and you're in the UK and you have problems, they're basically kind of like the security, like they kind of get U.S. citizens here out of trouble.
Right.
And I was like, what? Like that is, and they were like, yeah, we also kind of do like anti-terrorism, money laundering, like all this kind of stuff. And as I was talking to them, I was like, wait, like I am so like removed from thinking about the world in that way. Like the fact that this job, like it's so obvious that these jobs exist, right? But it's like
That was the UK? No.
they have like a base around, like they have bases around London, where they have like U.S. people like stationed, like from like like the Air Force and whatever, like Port Patrol, that deal with like whatever happens here with the U.S. citizens. But it's like you must really be thinking like, whoa, like what is like happening here?
Why can't they go to the airport with a passport? I guess like there's something. I don't know.
Yeah, like it's like well.
No, I can imagine. No, the
you...
British government can also be hard. Like there's a dark side to the British government.
Yeah,
I mean, that people would never imagine.
Exactly, but that's what I'm trying to say. It's like you have this front-facing side of the government, and I just know this because I studied the government so well, right? And then you have like the dark side of the government, and people don't really understand how the dark side of the government works, and you don't want to deal with it. But that's essentially what blockchain is.
Stuff like it's
like the dark side. It's like if you want to deal with blockchain, you have to understand how this side of the government operates, not like the whole taxing thing. It's about exactly that like you have U.S. government officials here that are like trying to get like U.S. citizens out of trouble here, and it's like, well, what crimes have they conducted? Like, why would they be here in the first place? It's like all these weird questions, but it's like we will never be dealing with these kind of things. This is like all military stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like now you have to think about, okay, so who are the people who use blockchain, and also why are all the people from crypto exchanges always in jail? Like Binance CEO in jail for money laundering. It's like, what do you think they launder money for?
I mean, I feel like this is how they made crypto a joke, though. To be fair, like no, but like.
But this is how they finance all the wars. Like I think a lot of probably like terrorism financing. I mean, this is like the whole problem with crypto, right? Like a lot of terrorism financing goes through crypto, like buying rockets, selling rockets. Like, do you know what I mean? Like if you want to start regulating.
I mean, I think government obviously doesn't like crypto. And then I think I'm almost suspicious that they have this strategy of scaring everybody out of the industry who is very concerned about being a law-abiding person, to make it like everything so like ambiguous and uncertain, and make everybody kind of afraid of getting in trouble, that like all of the like people consider themselves serious law-abiding people would just run away from the industry, and we'd be left with a bunch of clowns, and would just mess it up. And I think that's what, and then we're just left with a bunch of clowns who mess it up.
I think like it's not like unreasonable, because you do have to be like, like people who work in crypto, I don't think they fundamentally have any morals. Like if you really talk to people who are like super like into crypto, like
when did they get in though?
Their moral values are super weird.
Yeah, but I think the originals. Okay, but the 2017s, yeah, like 2017 and newer.
Yeah.
Probably. But there's still some originals from like 2015, 2014, 2011. I don't.
But you have to differentiate between like the people. You have to always differentiate between the people who invent things and the people who end up using things. It's kind of like how gunpowder was invented, but it wasn't. I think it was not really for gunpowder in the beginning. It was like fireworks, and then later on they used it for like gunpowder. I mean, any invention that had like good intentions eventually was it being used for like bad things. And personally, I'm just saying all of this because I don't think that, and this just comes after like a lot of study of morality. And by the way, I'm a German idealist. Like I'm super virtue ethicist. Like I live I try to live a very moral life. But I think that you have to be comfortable with engaging with crime and like lawlessness to a degree that like I think most people are just not comfortable with confronting, because they live very sheltered lives, like in in West London. people live very comfortable lives. Do you really want to? Who wants to do governance for people who do terrorism? I mean, do you know what I mean? It's like
They needed them.
you could be super screwed in the head, and I think that's why, for instance, I'm super screwed in the head because I would so be willing to. I mean, probably that's why I'm meeting all these people, weird people too. It's like maybe
I mean,
like
there's
sort
a
of
thing
like
called hypersanity. I've actually just read about this 10 days ago. But
hypersanity.
well, I had written a thing like a month ago, and I think that prompted someone to send me this other literature like a week ago. I like just about this theoretical like a theoretical sanest person in the world, and like they'd be very different from other people.
They're really, you know what they are? They're fucking Jesus. Because I've had this conversation with other people already where I was like, you know, okay, so there is this really funny page that I follow on Instagram, which is called Best Christian Memes. And I'm really just following this meme page for the jokes because, like, I find it super funny to see what Christian people, like, meme about. It's bizarre. But anyway, one of the jokes was like, oh, we should all be like Jesus. We should hang out with the sinners and, like, hang out with, like, thieves and, like, all that kind of stuff, you know? And by the way, also Socrates and all the original Greek philosophers, they hang out with all kinds of people. And I do believe that everybody who's like has hypersanity or whatever you call it, they're willing to hang out with everybody. And that means murderers, that means everybody.
Well, they're probably less afraid. Because, you know, okay, fine, I probably would say I'm hypersanity. Like, I mean, I was kind of like, no, I don't know, it's like, you can understand people, like everybody, crazy people, murderers, like normal people.
I don't know if you understand them or if you just treat them. If you at the end of the day still treat them as human beings, or. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you want to work in these kind of areas, like even like people who work in the military, right? I mean, and I know like a few people who work in the military. It's like the people. This is just a part of the war, like society that is so just crazy. Like the people that like work in the military are crazy, I think. Like how often do we actually meet people who work in the military? Like not that often.
I mean, I do think humans are dependent on delusion. So like I think every person is delusional. Like including myself, like every
we're
right,
super delusional.
like we need it.
But that's what I'm trying to say. Like even like the whole thing about like governance. I realize this too. I'm like, it is fucking delusional because at the end of the day, what you're thinking about, what I should be really like instead of writing like more philosophy and existentialist philosophy, really I should be starting to write on like criminal philosophy.
The reason I mention this is because like people
and immorality.
Right, because people who are like into like being in the military, like that's just another delusion to get them through life. Like it's just like another.
Well, it's another delusion of yourself justifying murder. Like, do you know what I mean? And the thing is that we're super good at it because we believe that, you know, I mean, the U.S. is amazing at this, where they're like, on all these veterans that returned from war and they killed this and that person, and like now we're gonna give them like 1,000, like we're like gonna give them like standing ovation for this shit, and I'm like. So you're just trying to re-socialize murderers in society, essentially. And I had this conversation with other people where they were like, yeah, you know, if you kill people... So yeah, my flatmate again, he's from Pakistan, right? And in Pakistan, people really kill each other quite frequently. Like, it's really common for your cousin or something to try and murder you because everybody has guns. It's like, you know, if you grow up next to fucking, like, ISIS, like... And Osama bin Laden, like, what do you think, like, how easy it is to, like, get a gun and shoot people? It's, like, super fucking, I mean, everybody has guns, you know? And also there is no law, which makes it even worse than in the US. So, and he was saying he's seen people who have killed other people, and they just switch. Like, once you engage in the act of murder, like, I think about that now he said this to me, because I never thought about it before. But I was like, yeah, like, he was saying, like, you can just tell that something in them just changed. And he was like, imagine, and I think about that too, like with the military or something. I'm like, okay, so you have all these people that were like, oh, this is amazing, go and kill other people. And I'm like, that's actually so traumatizing. And you just have a bunch of people in society that like commit these really awful crimes. And you can't really let them operate in like the normal world. So you let them operate on this like dark net, you let them operate on the blockchain. You give them like ways where they can like sort of like, you know, live without like it affecting those people, and it's so bizarre. And if you want to do governance, because Jesus actually, at the end of the day, is also a politician. If you look at him as an archetype, or Socrates or something, first you need to talk. It's not like you have to actively talk to them now, but you certainly need to engage with them because they're a huge part of the people that are like your population, sort of. Like if you think about blockchain as a nation, who is that population? And it would be shocking for you to think
It's
about
like a way to
this.
sandbox a little though. Like, I mean, I think like one of the biggest problems humanity's faced, and it's obviously way, but like that, like we were able to invent ships so much earlier than we were able to invent computing, because then all the land got conquered before we had like the good technology,
Yeah.
and so like we got stuck in traditions. Like all like we got no, there's no land left to experiment on, and start new on, once we had
Yeah.
like, right? Because like you couldn't do technocracy,
Yeah.
right? Like you can do like you can get used to like internet voting. You don't have a parliament. Like what is a parliament? Like to me, like why are there 600 members of parliament? Maybe it's because that's how many desks they can fit in a building, right?
No, I do genuinely believe that. I mean, I'm super idealistic in the sense that I think blockchain could be like such a revolution for people how they do governance and like the fact that you have a currency.
But it's a way to like separate yourself, like from like to start new. Do you want more tea? I could ask them.
Oh no, I'm good.
Yeah, but it's like a way to start new and separate. Like I'm thinking is
Yeah, but that is the delusion, because you. I think by the way, I'm just saying this because I think the same way as you. Like what I'm saying to you, I've said this to myself as well.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I totally believe that we can revolutionize something, and that means we can reinvent and like start fresh. But start fresh means. I mean, what would start fresh mean? Like, it's kind of like the same question you asked me, like, oh, if you were to design a nation, what would you do differently? And I think the starting point has to be something about either we change how we think about human nature, because how Western justice systems are, Western justice systems are fundamentally like either based on Christian ideas or they're based on Rawlsian ideas of like justice as fairness, or assumptions about human nature being egotistical. Either we would have to start thinking, okay, maybe there's not one human nature, but yeah, different human natures. And now that we accept that there's different human natures, like some that are just fucking awful and evil, and that's just a matter of fact, and then there are some are like super sweet. So what do you do with this polarity? Like how do you create a government? And then you start exploring. But the fundamental, like the principles just have to change, or one principle has to change. It's kind of like when you're conducting experiments, you have to change one variable, or you have to change your assumptions, because otherwise nothing changes. Going too far, or like going so far and thinking about like parliaments and this and that, I mean that is just a natural consequence of your assumption, in a way. Like you first have to change the assumptions. I think that's why I personally think philosophy is so interesting, because it's all about like it does like the groundwork for the assumptions. That's why Kant's work is also called the groundwork of metaphysics. Like you need to like lay the foundation, and then upon that foundation you can create all these beautiful decorations of like parliament, democracy. I mean that is just terms, and those are like super loose terms. Like, nobody really knows what democracy is.
Yeah. Just how do you like change things once people are already there and used to something? It's very hard. Like if I like if there was like new land that was just like new, right? And then like I bring over people who believe in something. Now we can just do the thing we believe. That's new. But if like we try to do it in like Wales, it's like all the Welsh people are gonna be like, what? No, like because like you're never gonna. It's like very hard to get them to like start over with like a new government, a new whatever, like a new like system of politics or everything, like, or a new economic system, like. You wouldn't be able to do it. You wouldn't be able to like run these. You can't. So like you can't run these experiments.
I think like no. At the end of the day, it has to solve something, right? It's like the same way you were saying, oh, you're thinking about something that nobody else is thinking about. You should be thinking about it, or something. You say.
Well, yeah, or like do the most important thing that you can do that nobody else will do.
Yeah, and I think like, for instance, with governance, a lot of it is like integrating. Like fundamentally it's integrating these really fragmented societies that are like not at all like converging. And I'm talking not, again, you're understanding me wrong. When I'm saying fragmented societies, I'm not talking about France and Germany are fragmented and no, I'm talking about like you take one society and you have people who are like super law-abiding and you have people who are not law-abiding. That is the fundament of political philosophy. Like you have people who abide laws and people who don't like to abide laws. So how do we bring these people together? And I think like we haven't really solved that problem at all. And that is the whole problem with blockchain. You have a lot of like.
What if blockchain really? I mean, I don't think blockchain has been used for what it can do yet. Like,
No, not at all.
Right.
Not at all. But I think that's also partly.
Almost like the early days of the internet. In a way, like the internet was like you're not allowed to do commercial stuff on the internet when it started.
Mm.
Like at first it was like military stuff, then it became like a thing for the public.
Yeah.
But it was illegal to do anything commercial on it. You couldn't sell stuff. Like the government, this was like the government let you use it on the condition that you not try to like make money off of it.
Yeah.
And then like that was a big breakthrough when like people are allowed to start to try to make money off of it, sell things, like do e-commerce and.
Yeah.
But
I definitely think that there's a huge bright, like super bright future.
For blockchain.
But like the.
Okay, like. Blockchain
like
could.
a double-edged sword. I don't know how much you're chronically online, but like they have at the moment they have like a huge trend. I mean, at least in like Gen Z algorithms, which is basically about the fact that people feel like the internet is broken. Like people have this feeling that the internet has broken in a way. Like it feels broken. Like the way that we used to interact
I can
with
just think
it.
of 50 different ways to approach saying that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Like the internet, it feels like they're saying like the internet feels broken. It feels super like the way that we used to approach it with this like playfulness and like go on there for like entertainment and like it would solve things for us. And now it's almost kind of like it's become this problem.
Well, that's how things are. I think everything just ends up becoming a way to just farm people. I mean, humans are. I mean, I don't think it's getting away from the point, but like humans are self-domesticated, almost like farm animals, and
Yeah.
and I just think everything evolves to like fit into like the agriculture of humanity itself. Like, I mean, alcohol, but like internet,
Yeah.
like sports, like video games, but like just everything. Obviously, jobs are the main thing, and then.
But the difference is that like
Religion.
the internet, let's say, the internet was never used for governance itself. Like the internet is a tool for governance that people can do like like online voting maybe. Like it makes things more efficient, but it was never intended to be like a it's just a technology. And blockchain, it's this weird connection between.
And one thing that really appeals to me about blockchain is like if you want to.
I mean, you could have it like the internet where you have like different you have your Facebook, you have your Google, and they kind of run the blockchain. You could have like a what I'm thinking about
It's
is
hard to regulate.
you could have like a good cop, and you could like have like a bad. I think that would be super interesting. Like you have like the blockchain, and then you have, let's say, like a law, like a super pro, like almost kind of like a dystopia versus utopia situation. And you have different like networks, and they're super big, like basically like Facebook and Google and YouTube or something. And they stand for like different things. They somehow like work with each other. That is the most realistic way of looking at it.
I mean, one thing I love about blockchain, I'm just thinking, is that it's painful to regulate.
Yeah.
It's like, what are they gonna do? Make it a felony for me to have a cold storage wallet? Like, and that's like, and do they really want to put people in jail for having a cold storage wallet? Like, it's like governments don't really like. That's a pain in the ass for them. Like, to try to like figure out who has like Bitcoin in cold storage and then charge them a felony for that. Like, that's in theory they could do it, but it'd be such a pain in the ass, right? Like, it's painful. It's painfully challenging to regulate. I think
exactly.
Yeah.
It's
But then
painfully hard to regulate, so
they probably won't. Like it's not tempting. It's like
no, I think it is tempting to. Well,
no,
they are
because-
regulating. I mean, blockchain is pretty. In some ways, it is pretty regulated because, for instance, like in the UK, like you can't even have like a Binance account.
No, that's because that's bullshit blockchain. Like
Yeah.
like I mean.
That is like consumer like interface.
Well, what if you really did it? Like, I don't know. Like, okay, I don't know. I just imagine. Like, I just feel like there's like to me just quite obvious. Like, just make it real. Like, securitize everything.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Like, or it's not as crazy as it sounds. Like it's securitized like labor. So like what if you just made everything a security that like are tokenized, right?
Well, that's what they're trying. Oh my god, this is so funny because I have this like super like religious colleague, and we have to like work on this project at the moment, which is kind of like goes in like tokenization. We were gonna do it on tokenization, and then she was like, I'm gonna refuse to do this because it's like against my like religion. Because she thinks like this like tokenization thing is like super evil because she's like sort of Christian. And I thought that was super bizarre because I was like, well, it's just really actually like democratizes like a lot of like access for a lot of people like in emerging countries, like to have access to like things, you know, like real estate or something. I don't know.
But like, okay, I get back to this idea that like, whoever does governance the best can do everything else the best.
Yeah.
And I think like, well, governance sucks. Like, I mean, in terms of like, it lags behind human ability and humans and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, so what I'm saying is, I was kind of curious if never mind. Anyway, so that like, things that, government is bad at governance, like, are bad at, like, it, like, so much of what they prohibit is because they know they're not capable of regulating. So, like, okay, securities laws.
Yeah.
Like this could be exchange traded. Like a restaurant could be exchange, like with one single location. Like a small business could be exchange traded.
Yeah.
But it's just like then they could do fraud. They could defraud their investors more easily if it was exchange traded. Like manipulate the public. Like people can get scammed more easily or like be lied to about whatever future property anyway. But like then it's like it's a real burden on government to have to like prosecute that or like punish that. Like imagine like if every little small business had a stock that was like on the NASDAQ or something, right? And well, then there's like a lot of ways for them to like get the public to invest based on lies, and then like people get scammed, right? And I mean, then if you want to punish like small businesses, for example, for doing that, that's like a burden on government. That's like prosecuting. That's maybe like investigating.
Yeah, it's really high cost.
It's like they don't want that responsibility. Yeah. So they just say like it's really hard to be a publicly traded company. Like,
but you're looking at this from a super like.
Yeah, I'm thinking if you could do governance really well.
You're just looking at this from a. Yeah, it's clear that you've been sort of like educated in the U.S. because like a lot of ideas that you have are like they just assume that people want to govern everything. Whereas, for instance, in the UK, like. What used to be also like one, like for instance Nozick, right? He's not necessarily very popular, but so one of the things that he was saying is that like they believe in a minimal state, so the state should only govern what it has to govern. That is like the fundamental idea of liberalism, right? Like liberal like ideology, not like American liberalism, but like European liberalism, that the state shouldn't really govern everything. It just only like the basic
balance this out through the experiments of all the jurisdictions, right? Like, I mean, we have the 50 states in the U.S., but you have like all sorts of national, subnational governments around the world. But like, I think we kind of see like what works because everything is like kind of in the spectrum, like somewhere in the spectrum of like libertarian and not, right? Like a libertarian and authoritarian. And I think we just see like, well, what strikes the best balance? Like that people have the best quality of life or the most wealth. And probably like the U.S. for a big, like the U.S. is good for a big. I mean, well, it's got problems. Like it's horrible. Like every country's horrible. I mean, like
the U.S. has California has like a massive like homelessness problem.
But that's because it's so great, actually. Really, because people would rather be homeless. I mean, people would rather be homeless in San Francisco than have a home in Nebraska. That's why we have so much like homelessness. Like it's because it's like honestly, I'd probably rather be like homeless in San Francisco than have a house in Nebraska. Like I can just hang out with fascinating people all the time, and I'll sleep in a tent on the sidewalk, we call it. Like I'd rather do that than like have a nice house in Nebraska. Like I mean, I think like there's a reason why like the best parts of the country are where we have the most homelessness, because it's better to be homeless there than like to even not be homeless somewhere else. if you look at I don't know if this is relevant. I was like, I love like I was the other day I was looking at like all the countries and how many billionaires per capita they have.
Yeah.
And like looking at so the average country has 0.34 billionaires per million people, and then if you look at the ones that are higher than that and the ones that are below that, like in the countries like I think people would say have a higher quality of life are the ones that are above that. Like it's like we've run the experiment about like whether more billionaires are good or bad. Like it's right there. It's like you not want to live. People would not want to live as much in the countries where you have fewer billionaires, like below average.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
also these people they take care of where they are. I feel like these are actually probably smart people, right? Like I mean some of them. In theory,
Yeah, I mean like the ones that come from like random ass countries, they build up those countries.
We're just thinking if 10 billionaires moved to Kenya tomorrow, they would like take care of it more. Like they would be like, okay, no, like this has to we have to make it nice. It's very stable. Like they know what to do a little bit.
They would just put like money in infrastructure and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, and they would just like figure out how to like make the penal system not like whatever and all that.
It is.
Yeah.
I
was
think,
Delaware. I'm sorry, I was thinking about Delaware.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like with blockchain, I think probably the start would be like to start thinking about like how you can have the maximum impact with least effort. Like in terms of regulation, like how can you, what is like the one thing that you would do that would have like a maximum impact on like regulation? Like what is the smallest
Ignore
thing?
it. Like just pretend you're the real government. No, like that sounds crazy. Like I gotta figure out how to like evangelize what I'm doing. Like I feel like it could be described 1,000 different ways based on the audience. Like so I don't know. I don't know. I was thinking of Delaware recently. Like that seemed interesting. Like like in this conversation, I was thinking like Delaware seemed like a relevant thing. That all the big companies they incorporate in Delaware. Like all the big publicly traded, like they're all incorporated in Delaware.
Why?
Right? Why? And it's because the state of Delaware like really made it a priority for themselves to make their courts very efficient at handling like disputes in corporate law type of situations. Like right, because like yeah, if you don't have a good court, it keeps both parties waiting. It like if it's slow, like both parties suffer. Whichever side of the lawsuit you're on, it's like because the court's moving slowly and inefficiently and incompetently, like it ends up both parties right suffer from that. So like Delaware decided to just like work hard to have the best courts for like resolving like disputes in corporate law, and so every corporation started to incorporate in Delaware because like they felt like if there's any dispute, like it gets handled efficiently. Right, and so that's why every big company is incorporated in Delaware.
It's kind of like how a lot of divorce cases are done here.
Oh, is there like a jurisdiction that's good at divorce here?
Well, they have like the Royal Courts of Justice here, and like a lot of celebrities choose to get their divorce here for some reason.
In England?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Because like they're pretty good at handling like a divorce case.
I didn't know.
I think it's probably also because they're one of the first countries in Europe that allowed it.
Interesting.
I think there was some king who wanted to.
I did look at like who does it faster and slowest. Like New York, was much faster than England for divorce in terms of speed.
Yeah, that is not necessarily all that matters.
But
right?
speed isn't all that matters. I think it's fairness. But I think people choose to use what is like. So that's an example I think of like superior governance. Like courts are part of a governance system, and Delaware has the best courts for like corporate law. And so, like, all the corporations end up incorporating Delaware for that reason. It's actually a myth that they save taxes. This is what, like, some Americans don't know. They think that they save taxes, like, we're in Delaware. No, that's not true at all. It's about, like, the courts. But, like, I kind of think, like, if you have a blockchain that is the best at governance for, like, let's say, a financial exchange or, like, letting everybody tokenize everything and, like, regulating reputations and consequences.
Well, but, like, that's, like, one of the things that I saw, like, MetaLex. But they have like some companies now that they're trying to do like, well, but they kind of like want to create like super efficient like smart contracts, and like.
Also, moral authority is really important, I think, and the mechanical legitimacy. Do
you know what I mean? And
yeah,
for instance, when you're talking about efficiency, I think for instance, what these corporate lawyers are doing, that's all about efficiency, but it's just not very convincing because
The
there's
thing is,
no
you
moral
can have
authority.
the coolest, like, or you can have, like, the best smart contract system, or, like, you can have, like, you can come up with the best stuff,
Yeah,
but it has no moral authority.
exactly. That is the problem. And so again, if we
That's why,
end up with moral authority again, you have to go back to the basics.
right.
Yeah. So get back to moral philosophy.
So what about, I don't know, I think, like, it would be worth trying to create, like, a really mechanically legitimate global democracy. And through all the challenges that go with that, where, like, maybe, like, you have various participation levels, but you wait for it. Like, you do things to account for that. That you can try to, like, actually represent all 8 billion people, not as nations. I think it can, like, I actually feel like it's very doable. I don't know, that's one of my big goals.
I just wonder why. I don't know if everybody would want to be.
It doesn't have to be used for everything, but it should be, like, there as an option. But then also it would have, like, legitimacy to govern things.
No, I think like. I think it's good. I mean, it sounds a bit bizarre, but it's a bit like how some people think that there's like the philosopher, like Plato's like philosopher king. The idea that like you have like philosophers should like rule the world, which I think is awful. I don't think that philosophers should rule the world at all, but it does certainly say something about it. I don't think it's fine. So one of my American friends, she was working here for an NGO that was supposed to give migrants the right to vote. And actually, a lot of my friends that I talked to were like, that is an awful idea. Like, we should not give migrants the right to vote in the UK. And so it's like very interesting because at the end of the day, I don't think that a lot of people believe that everybody should have the right to vote. And I think that there is super illegitimate reasons for that, like racism, discrimination, and then to some extent there is also legitimate reasons to that.
I mean, inclusion is healthy in theory.
Inclusion is healthy, but it is an ideal that should always be aspired towards, but it is never actually to be. It sounds a bit bizarre, but it's never actually to be reached. And I've learned this through very random like job. So basically, I was an ESG research analyst for an investment advisory, and we were creating like a ESG rating system for like local councils in the UK. So like how well are they doing on their ESG like overall? And my boss that actually ended up having like I quit for other reasons, but he's super smart. Like he did like a PhD in quantum, like what is it called, astrophysics or whatever at Imperial. And he was saying, well, the thing with like with this ESG rating system is like you have to create these ideals that councils should always like aspire towards, but it would be like very hard for them to actually ever get like a perfect score. Right? Like it's also like the whole point is never for them to actually get a ideal like a perfect score. The idea is always that they get like a subpar score, so they have something to strive for.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And that's like the thing with like I think it's like for an ideal that is a nice ideal, but I don't think anybody actually ever thinks that that would be like a great thing if it actually ever came about. Do you know what I mean?
You want manageable problems because, like you rather than no problems. It's better to have some manageable problems.
Like even like think about it like this way, like even like with Twitter, like I think anybody could sign up on Twitter, and I think like the reason for why Twitter now sort of works well in a way since Elon Musk took it over is because he just doesn't really regulate it at all. It's kind of like he just lets people sign up and like say whatever they want, and so everybody is represented. Like everybody can say what they want, and this is the representation. They can just say whatever they want.
I'm thinking if you're a political. Oh, sorry.
But like if you're a governance system, and everybody is represented, and it's not through freedom of speech, because surely there would be like like restrictions on like what people can do and say. So what is the representation then about if it's not about like what are you representing them for? Like if it's not like the nation. Like what is like what is the point of representing them? For for themselves too. If it's not freedom, like if it's not speech or action, like freedom to act or say something, and it's also not them being represented like a nation, like do they need their identity represented like by global society? Like I don't know. Like if I ask myself personally, would I want myself to be represented in like a global court? That seems like a rather dystopian. Like, I mean, I think there's a reason for why billionaires super often are like super anonymous, and like they actually like you actually never know who they are. You don't know shit about them. They're like super underground. Because it's like when you've reached that, like that is what freedom looks like. It's like the ability to like,
I don't know, like,
you know,
I
like
feel like for the regular, yeah.
like there's two perspectives. Like for instance, like what you're doing is a very Kantian perspective. It's like freedom is the ability to self-regulate. That is a very German idealist perspective of like what freedom is.
I mean, I probably do think a lot about fairness and exploitation, but like
it's a very Rawlsian account of like justice, which is not anything bad.
If you like had like a,
but it's not necessarily multicultural. Like don't like if you have to think about it like now and you want to revolutionize, you have to stop thinking from like a Western, purely like Western centric, like canon or like tradition.
all right, theoretically, like let's say someone feels like they need to get a job to earn money. Okay,
Yeah.
so like now what do? You like apply for jobs and they like offer you a wage or something.
Yeah.
Right. What if instead you could like issue tokens that you promise are redeemable for an hour of like everything you're good at doing,
Yeah.
and that you'll also promise like they honestly update it when you're like good at doing new things. You'll include
Yeah.
that into the like list, and then like you can put it on like some global exchange that anyone in the world can like bid on your token.
Yeah.
Like so it's like let's say it's redeemable for an hour of your time or something, and
Yeah.
and
A bit like Fiverr.
yeah, but
Like
yeah,
an
but the fact that
like an
it's,
exchangeable job market.
it's the fact that it's like people can hold, they can invest in it. They can like you can promise that like it's always redeemable. So like in 5 years, if I have more skills, if I finish uni, if this or that,
Yeah.
like it could go up in value.
Yeah.
And then yeah, just that like then anybody who and then like what if it's like okay, so if you want to hire me to do anything, you have to buy my coin on the exchange or something, or you have to like, or almost like I'm like a country, right? Like, you know, like if you're using your credit card in another country, it does the exchange automatically, right? Well, imagine like if someone wants to hire me for an hour, it's like an hour is just one of my tokens always. I'm not like changing the price as I have more experience. The market decides what that's worth on the exchange, and then like when you're just like hiring me, you have to like for 5 hours you have to get 5 of my tokens, and it's like converting it automatically, like right, as if I was a country. It's like a different currency, right? Well, this would make it harder to exploit labor, which is empowering for like the typical person. But then I feel like you need very good governance with a lot of moral authority to like govern things like that, like govern like someone's honesty. Are they like being honest with the redemptions, or are they like being lazy?
I mean, it's the same problems you have with like universal basic income. There's the problems seem similar.
I just think like anything new and good, I just think you need better governance to do new good things. And it seems so simple. Like
I think it's funny that you think it from that perspective. I think governance is like the really important aspect of things. I think governance is like the thing that should really just come at the end when it's like necessary to like put it all under like, kind of like how Facebook or like other things that just kind of like take off and they, yeah, I think I do believe like a little in like some level of like self-regulation, and then like governance is just there to put like to keep it all in check, like at the end, like kind of like a fence that rings around it. I mean, that's just personally how I look at things. I don't think the starting point ever should be like governance, and I think blockchain is like slightly too. I think it needs a philosophy. And then the governance will kind of come afterwards. It's a little bit how think about Marx, because you're talking about labor exploitation, right? And that is fundamentally something that he coined. But like Marx never really described what communism was. He just sort of talked about communism as a philosophy and like a way of thinking. and then people later on, you know, used his philosophy to create governance systems. So I think with blockchain, first you have to create a philosophy, and then the governance system sort of will arise from that later. I mean, that is just, I'm just extrapolating this from like how it has historically been. I think it's hard to create like a governance system because what you're talking about is like a technical, like efficiency, like improving.
I'm actually thinking.
Like,
I mean,
very specific
personally,
things.
like, I mean, I'm actually thinking of a way to change the political system of everywhere by creating like a mock political system for everywhere that is just better, and then like
Yeah, but you're
people
looking
become
at,
intolerant of the traditional political system.
before you ask yourself these questions, you always have to think about better for who, better for what. I mean,
For everybody. Like actually though. Like I actually think it's a way to like improve improve everybody's situation and reduce unnecessary suffering for everybody. So like to have a system where everybody kind of suffers less. I think it's pretty possible.
where everybody suffers less.
Yeah.
I think
I think it's doable. I really do. Yeah, I think like you could reinvent political systems that have the result of maybe even 100% of people suffering less than they otherwise would.
personally, I think you have to redesign. You would have to have just like multiple. Okay, I'm just not a value monist, and so in that way, I believe you would have to have always like a different range of political systems, and people should have. I think people should have the ability to choose on which one they would want to be in.
But how do you govern that choice-making process? It's you got. I agree. But
I think people should be like empowered to choose in which system they want to be in, because at the end of the day, it's hard. You can't eliminate suffering, so people just have to choose their form of suffering. Like you have to get to a point in political systems where people can be like, this is the kind of suffering
that's
I
built
want.
into like the models I think about that like, but you have to go like when do you get like you can have like let people choose between different political systems maybe right and the ones that they kind of invented on their own like own locally or whatever,
Yeah.
but and as theirs gets corrupted maybe they want to go to like some other kind of default and start over.
Yeah.
But it's like how do you govern like when do they get to make that choice? Something needs to be there. Like there needs to be.
Yeah, but then that is more like a thing of, is that like a blockchain thing, or is that more like a, you need something else but a passport? Maybe like the whole idea of a passport is a little bit outdated, and so you need something else. And so you need something else which is not a passport, but then that is not necessarily blockchain. Blockchain is just the technology on which you.
Almost like capitalism for government too. I like the idea. Like I guess I literally just thought of that. like to frame it that way. But there's no competition to government. They literally don't have any competition other than like maybe that people move to a different place. But like
You know, even like no competition to capitalism.
no, that there's no like if they're bad at solving problems or if they're bad at solving suffering or anything like that. That there's no competitor. Like other than that, you can move.
But I think that's part of the reason for why, let's say, people like Elon Musk want to make our species like interplanetary.
Yeah, but that's a little bit silly, to be honest. Like,
I mean, of course
that's
silly.
He's just trying to be like the first fish to go on land. Like, right? I mean, we used to all be fish. Like,
He's just the Genghis Khan of the 21st century.
The,
Quite literally, with his like 7 kids or whatever.
I know someone who has a lot more kids. I know someone who has probably has at least 300 to 800 kids.
Because of like sperm donation?
Yeah, like Simon Watson, I know him.
Who?
Like, never mind, doesn't matter. But like,
Sammy Watson?
Simon Watson, yeah, he says he has 800 to 1,000 kids, but I think it's probably only 300. I think he's exaggerating. But 300 is still a lot. And he could have 800. I don't really believe him.
If you.
That's so weird. It's actually funny that people think Elon Musk is trying to like be a Genghis Khan because he is so restrained in this respect.
Yeah.
Like 12 kids isn't that many, to be honest. I mean, sorry, it's like so much. That's weird.
Well, I think
anyway.
it's also It's not that many if you're a billionaire and you have like nannies.
Right, now 12 is very few for like a billionaire.
Yeah. But, I mean, for a guy, I guess. For a woman, that might be a bit much. Unless they're adopted,
yeah,
I guess.
but-
Or like she wants to be like a mega mom.
There is a couple, they use surrogates to have like 20-something kids. I mean, have you seen them? I think the father went to jail for some other financial crime. It was probably to make the money to pay for the nannies and the surrogates. He
Well, that's
committed some
weird.
financial crimes and went to jail. It's kind of, What do you do like daily usually? Like how do you spend your time?
My day?
Yeah. What do you like to do?
It really depends on like my moods. I guess I kind of like go I think like my priorities shifted. Like before that my priority was more being productive, and now it's more like first of all it's like as if I had like priorities throughout the day, and my first priority is always to get my energy in the right place. Like before I get my energy, like my headspace in the right headspace, like I'm not gonna do anything. Like every day, like depending on, no matter how I wake up or no matter how my day starts, like my focus is like to first redirect myself to get into like the best headspace I can be in. And then once I feel like I'm in the best place I can be in for the day, I'm like, well, what can I do now that is like the best usage of this energy, or like the best usage of like my time and stuff. But like that varies like every day, you know?
Yeah.
It's like you to take. Sometimes you get in your best headspace like right in the morning, and sometimes you get in your best headspace like just later in the afternoon. And you kind of like have to like see how you want to, like once you get there, like how do you feel, like what do you want to do then. So sometimes like for instance after work I go to the library and I just read. and I feel like that is like, and I have like a friend of mine who's writing his master's dissertation right now in philosophy of science, so I just kind of like see him there. I usually know what his favorite, he's a bit autistic, so he like has his favorite spot that he always sits, and he's there every day, so I know like when I go in he'll be there, and then we just kind of like study together. And then I go home and like, or like, and then like for instance recently I've been, because I live like close to the park, and in the mornings I go do yoga at like 5-6 a.m.
Oh.
And then I get coffee and like I start work.
So you wake up before 5 a.m.
Sometimes yeah. Like now, well,
Or do you just stay up all night sometimes and then like
no,
do yoga at 5
I
a.m.?
just go to sleep early. I get up at like 6 and go to like have yoga, do like meditation and like all that kind of stuff.
At the gym or at home?
No, in the park.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so peaceful. Is it possible to get another one of these?
Another one. Please, like we close.
Oh, you closed it.
Oh yeah,
Don't worry about
could
it.
you actually bring the bell?
I repaid it.
Oh, you really did?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah, like what was I going to say? Yeah, so like I go to the park, and I've met like some cool people like there. Like on Sunday, one's like a Nigerian filmmaker. Like, so I try to like I just have like sort of like, what is it called? I forgot what Kant calls it. Postulates. Yeah, like postulates and maxims to live by. Like one of my maxims is always like any person that I engage with, I want to treat them like as an end of themselves, and like recognize the fact that they're like also conscious and that they're also human beings. Like recognize them the same way I recognize myself. And that is, I think, like that has taken, like now it becomes easier for me, but it took me like a few weeks to just change my mindset and get into that mindset. Like really change the way that I interact with the world. So I think like a big part for me is like my philosophy is like first like it's applied. It's like changing the way you interact with like your surrounding. And then once you have applied that and you're in that headspace, then you can do cool other things like reading, going to the library, reading random books, like writing about things. But I try to make it like holistic. So in the mornings, yeah, like get a coffee, like meditate or like do yoga, get in the right headspace. And then once you're in the right headspace, everything else just flows, you know? Like you don't have to think about it too much. I like that. So I can't really say what I do every day. Like today I just decided to get my hair done. Like I was thinking about it for a long while, but I didn't have an appointment. Like I had an appointment for color consultation, but I didn't actually expect to do it today. And then the guy was like, oh, well, do you just want to do it today? And I was just like, yeah, why not? Like, whatever. So I was there with my laptop, like doing work in the hair salon. And And I think that worked out quite well too. Like, but I didn't expect it. Like, I kind of liked the element of surprise. You know, like otherwise you get a bit bored.
Yeah.
You have to like have like an element of.
Yeah, if you like to change it up, right? Yeah. Oh, I always alternate from like short to not short. Like I like, I guess now it's sometimes like I have very short hair.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
something like I mean I changed my hair like relatively frequently now. I never used to. I always had the same hairstyle for many years. It was like long, natural, like virgin hair, and then I sort of like went off the rail. I mean, I never go off the rails with it. They're always very like like natural-esque, but like so yeah, I guess like my days sort of consist of living like a philosophy, like taking like philosophy seriously, like living it. I think a lot of people don't understand that philosophy is something that has to be lived. Like the same way Socrates like talks to, you know, like a whole bunch of people. Like if you want to understand, if you really care about understanding like the world how it is, you have to experience the world and live it. Most people are just not really there to experience or live the world, I think. Like if you interact with most people, like they're super afraid of interaction, like genuine interaction, like talking, like really talking to somebody else, like about like really like stuff, you know?
Oh yeah, no,
People are really scared about that.
yeah. Like most people, like if I try to talk about like, do we die when we sleep, like, like, or something, you know what I mean, like that type of conversation will put someone off immediately.
Yeah, they get super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think you have to teach yourself first to like just be like hyper sane or whatever you call it. And then I think once you get there, then things just kind of flow. It's kind of like the same way you said, oh, if I mix like this medicine with like acid, like I would like invent, like it would just come so naturally to like invent a car.
Right.
Like it's just kind of like it's weird because you first have to get yourself in the state of consciousness, and then things just flow. Because that's kind of like what they say about time relativity too. It's like, yeah, there is time, but the way that you experience time also is like super subjective to like what state of mind you're in. Like when you're super into something, it just feels like time just passes by. So I think you always want to get yourself into the right like headspace and consciousness, and then things just like cool stuff just comes. Like inventions come, like cool ideas come. You can't force, like that's like the thing, you can't force creativity at all. And like even these mathematicians that I was listening to, like they said like mathematics is a lot about just like having like a leap of faith and like being creative. And I did realize that the less I look for things, the more I find. Like it's kind of like as if instead of trying to look for things, you have to allow things coming to you. It's like a different way of living.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, is that just a very basic like attract, don't chase, or no? It's more sophisticated than that, probably.
Well, I think like attract and don't chase is like a. No, I think you should still chase something, like you know the same way like for instance I chase philosophy in a way, but like it's not really for like an end or anything. Now I think. Before that, I think, and that's why I never wrote anything before, I was too obsessed with getting the right answer. You know? It's like getting the right, like, it's like the same thing with the governance system. It's like chasing too much the right kind of governance system. Is that going to get you closer to really the right kind of governance system? You should
It's
still
deeper
chase,
than that.
you should
You know,
you should still chase the governance.
I mean, if you want to go back into that, I've been worried about boring you though. But like, okay, you know, this thing like hierarchy of laws. Nobody thinks about this. I don't even know if you know what I mean by it, but like, I think this is probably the most important thing in governance. Because if you get this right, everything else can fix itself.
No, I think they do definitely have hierarchies of laws.
Oh, they do have hierarchies of laws. Like in the United States, I could think of almost 20 hierarchies of laws, or maybe more, maybe 25. But like, and actually in the UK you have much less than that, which is probably why like maybe the US has better governance in theory, like, or at least a more capable governance, like to take over the world, right? Like really dominate the world, right? Like, but no hierarchy of law.
US.
No, but I don't like the U. No, the US sucks. Everything sucks. But like the US is horrible. No, I mean I'm here for a reason. I like the UK better, but like.
You're here, but you're romanticizing there.
They're good at having power. I don't know if they're good at making it nice to live in. But America is good at having like power.
Yeah. They do like a massively great job at it.
Silicon Valley. I mean, no, but that's a pretty big deal that they have all like the tech companies like, and that like we're all walking around with things in our pockets that were like designed in America.
yeah, I think I wish I would think like a little bit like more like you or like other people where like they're like I'm gonna chase this like solution, and then like you think about it in so many different ways. I think maybe I've become too nihilist in a way that the right thing just I just don't think like the right thing as such like does really exist. I think you can always have like proxies and things that like are like so basically
It's a problem of problems.
like
Like,
uh
oh, that's almost like a
like
problem.
Dante has written about this in his like De Monarchia, which I should probably write about that because I started reading it and then I stopped. But the and here he talks there about like three different kinds of governance, and he talks about the fact that governance in the world. I mean, he's also super religious, so you have to see it from that perspective. But he says like like religious governance is like intemporal. It's like not dependent on the time, but like governance in the world is like so time dependent, and everything's just there for a moment. And so the question of the right thing is hard because it's only right for that moment, and then the moment changes and the circumstances change, and that's why like empires rise and fall. So it's just about like what's instead of thinking about what's right forever, it's just like about I think at the end it's just about what's right for now or like the foreseeable future. I mean, and that could also be like 200 years or something, right? But like thinking of like impermanence and like social science, I find that like a little bit.
That's the thing. It's like, I mean, that's like that comes from I think hierarchy of laws, sort of, and I think it can also be like multidimensional. It could be interchangeable. Like it could be like the U.S. is kind of a little bit fixed with like 25 different levels of law. I feel like if you really go through it like really in a nerdy way, like, but it's pretty fixed, and it's like, well, what if you like had it less fixed? What if you had it conditional? What if it was like an algorithm? What if it was like, and then like, what if you can get that right? Then that's what, like, it's not even about like what are rights and what are this and what, like how do you do a legislative system? It's like maybe it's just about hierarchy of laws. Then you do the best you can, and everything else will fix itself. Like everything else will optimize over time, properly.
Yeah, I could see things going in that way. At some point, I feel like AI was more developed.
I mean, AI is useful. You might as well try to like use it where you can in this, but like, I don't even think you need AI for this. Like you could do it without AI, but like you might as well use it since you got it. Do you go to an office every day, like mostly, or?
No, we have an office, but like it's in Soho. But I don't really like going in. I don't find the people very like inspiring. Like I'd rather spend my time by myself.
Yeah. Do you work set hours, or like you just work whenever?
No, I do have to work from 8 to 6.
Wow, you work from 8 to 6?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That seems tough.
Long time, right?
I mean, I've done that, but like a long time ago, and it's hard. Like in terms of like, I guess mental freedom. I don't know.
I think that's just the mindset.
You work from 8 a.m. to 6, like 5 days a week?
But I don't really use all of that time just like for work.
Yeah, no.
It's just a time where I'm available for people to like ask me to do things.
No, I'm just impressed that you seem quite well for someone who would have to work from 8 to 6.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think like a lot of things in my life have changed. That's why I think it's just a mindset thing. I think like if you let other things like affect you a lot, like you can. I think like if you work much less, like that would impact you.
Yeah, I think it's more about the control.
Yeah, it's like how much. It's more about like how much mental control you give to something else rather than. It's all like just a perspective. I'm not like super like happy about the fact that I have to work for that firm, but at the same time, right now, it gives me like the freedom to do whatever I want. Like they're pretty good. Like I can work remotely in Europe. Like I don't have to be in London even for 6 months a year. So it's like I get a lot of perks in a way. So that, but I don't.
It's just something to do, right? It's just like it's.
Well, I guess it kind of like it's nice in a way because I can just do some writing and then see what I really want to do. that like makes me money off like something that I'm like super passionate about. Because obviously this is not like my passion or anything.
Oh, right. Because what is it exactly? Like, is it an analysis? Like, or
Yeah, I'm an analysis.
analyst?
Analyst. I forgot where are you?
In finance?
Yeah, like an asset management.
Hmm.
That's pretty chill, actually.
Is it interesting? Like, I don't know. You really told me.
I'm pretty detached from like.
Is it intellectually challenging? Like what you do specifically?
No, like I don't really think about it that much. Like my job is for me kind of like a side quest. Like I'm like, I do it, but like it's like my mental energy like throughout the day like just rarely focuses on my job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like my job is like for me in terms of like the things that I think about is like at the back of it. Like my mental energy.
I guess there's not opportunities to show off.
Hmm?
Like opportunities to show off.
But I don't really care what those people think.
But yeah, I know. But I feel like you're gonna be doing something. It's like something. Might as well.
I don't know.
Nah,
Yeah, I don't. I want to do something on my own, for sure.
No, it's not about what people think. It's about it's the opportunity to find intellectual stimulation and thinking of things that someone else wouldn't know. That are worth thinking of.
Oh, you mean like in the firm?
Well, I don't know. I feel like are you like assessing the value of something, predicting the future value of things? Not really. No, like.
It's a trading business. It's not about that. That's more like. That's more. Oh yeah. Should we go?
You actually close?
Oh, okay.
Alright.
No worries.
Yeah, space.
Thanks.
Do you live here? I could like walk over if you want.
Yeah, where do you want to?
I think it was up here. No, I don't use the bathroom.
Okay. I'll wait.
But no, it's upstairs. Do you have to come down? I think the exit is upstairs. That's why.
Really?
And the
What? I don't remember that. It feels like ages ago now. No. Oh, reception here.
You have a scooter? Black scooter? It's like it's a yeah, thank you. I'll ride it or you ride it. Oh, thank you. It's open, I'll fix it up.
That's so funny. And you branded it like with your
Yeah. And then like
United Humans.
I had a boot tag, I had to put a boot tag just so like maybe people won't steal it. I think it's owned by the police or something.
Oh,
But I just
really?
leave it around stores. Oh, I love these. I'm surprised like these aren't like Lime bikes everywhere because you get your hands. Like bikes are fast, sure. Like they're fast for this, but you don't get your hands.
This is so hilarious. Oh my god. This is probably the funniest thing about you today.
I have other ones too.
Like the San Francisco tech.
These are more popular there. People like
Wait, so what do you do like every day?
I get distracted easily by like I live in now like I'm mostly in this like community that has like 100 people. It's like a compound of warehouses and like an artsy part of East London.
Yeah.
So like there are like I kind of let myself get distracted sometimes for fun, but I try to like regulate it.
But like, do you like write? Like, so you guess you read papers, you like research stuff, but like, what is the like that you're working towards?
do a lot of translating, like of like from the future to like I don't know, like I try to like translate futuristic concepts into like what people would understand today. I find that challenging.
Does that make you any money?
I don't know. Obviously, I got in early.
So you're sort of like chilling in your like tech utopia.
Yeah, but I've done other things for money like that I've had to do sometimes. I mean, like or for fun, but like
Parking lot. Parking lot.
oh, that too, yeah. Oh man, the most fun I ever had, I think, honestly, was as like not a pretend taxi driver in San Francisco.
So do you think like because I'm trying to like create like limit that give up that room, do you think like moving to London where you live is like a good place to be?
Yeah, especially if you don't have to commute anywhere. Yeah, I would say that. You don't have to go to like to work in an office.
You gotta let me know the area that you live in.
There's openings too. So my particular one has 14 rooms, and like yeah, there's some vacancies.
14 what?
Like there's 14 rooms, and then like it's like part of a compound with like 100 people, and then like. So it's a really posh kind of warehouse. Like I mean, compared to other warehouses, it's like a relatively posh warehouse.
You're like intriguing me. I'm like, this sounds like some communist utopia.
I mean, the only thing I feel bad is like people are struggling there a little bit. Like not too bad. Like no, it's not poor, but it's like even some like friends have told me like stop like be careful like you don't like get resented like by like your housemates for like them thinking you have more money than them or something, or like maybe they're struggling to like pay their bills. And it seems like you're not 100%. Like I've had friends tell me that. I don't know.
So why do you live in
Oh, I guess moral support. Like honestly, I kind of think maybe I thought it'd be like moral support, to, like have like to be able to like update all these housemates on like how I'm doing. No, like how my project's doing or something. I don't know. Like I was afraid to live alone, like where you just live like yeah.
Maybe just live like a normal house.
No, oh normal house? No, I wouldn't want to do that. Like, I feel like this is more interesting. But
Oh my god. I'm like intrigued. I kind of like want to see what you like where you live.
I mean, I could go.
Not today, but like
Yeah,
for
sure.
sure. Like maybe I'd be intrigued because it sounds a bit freaky.
Yeah, it's alright. I think it was cooler a few years ago. I wasn't there then.
Oh, okay.
It got like people developed the area and then like it got more regulated because of that.
Yeah.
There used to be raves every night. Now it's like it's not like that. It's like quiet. At night it's like quiet. Like it's like, but yeah, it used to be like where I lived. Like before I lived there, used to be raves every night. Like 2 years ago. In these places.
That's crazy. Doesn't it feel like you're not in the city center? Like,
No, it's free. It's Stratford,
Yeah.
but it's like a little bit west of Stratford.
it's not East Village. It's like a complex, like a area.
They're like converted warehouses, but they're nice. Like well, at least mine is nice. Like it's not moldy. It doesn't have any like. It's like completely nice. Like you're not obsessed with that stuff. But yeah.
It sounds so random.
It's like newly refurbished. It looks fancy on the inside, but like it was like a regular. A few of the bedrooms don't even have windows, but I managed to like get. Well, yeah, obviously I'm not gonna put that. So I got like.
Oh well, I sort of need to, when I'm coming back, I need to like but I like living in zone 1. So.
Oh yeah. I also like thing in Shoreditch. It's interesting.
Yeah, I don't really want to live there because I've lived there before, but
Camden's not bad, but I don't know any communities there.
what you're doing sounds really extreme.
Oh, like the housing or the?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's so.
You know, I kind of feel like it's like easy to get my own place. I can like get my own. Like I feel like the idea of like having a few places and just like bouncing between them.
Yeah.
And like you have your option, like get a flat, like that's just yours, and you have this, and it's like I can like whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was looking at like a live work warehouse, like right on the canal. That like it's like 2,000 square feet. Like I have to myself.
You should like host people.
Right.
Like
Or,
instead of like just host people from like all over the world, like tech places. Have interesting people stay at yours.
I was even thinking like.
That would be like really united Cubans.
You know, I was thinking of like putting cameras, like with their consent,
Yeah.
like putting cameras everywhere in a warehouse and making it like a live stream where we like work on this and then like we work on United Humans and like maybe even like trying to get like maybe acting, people trying to get careers in acting but also be interested in this type of thing. Like they can do both maybe because like they
That's
get
what freaky. I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
also there's like I feel like there's an integrity to it. Like corruption and whatever. I feel weird, just like I'm too tall. Like, like it almost seems like an anti-corruption thing, which is like corruption resistance. Like, if people can always see what you're doing, like you can see what's like it's like it's like they can see why you something made you make a decision, like that maybe was a little bit unnatural. It's like at least they can see it.
Yeah. Oh my god, you need to keep me updated. Like first you need to send me like a link of where you live because I'm like, what is this place? I need to like read about it. Like this is like, it seems so detached. Like normal living. I'm like, what the hell?
It's fun. Yeah.
That's not even for me here.
It is, yeah.
Get them safe.
Yeah.
I'm like weird. I'm like, this is like, you told me like so much stuff in the last 10 minutes. I'm like, my mind is like, what?
Yeah.
It's so fun. But like also, I think what it sounds like for me would like be weird, but I'd probably feel really lonely.
Yeah, but I feel like it's unusual. Like it's like I wanted to grab this because like it's hard to find these. It's like compared to like I can always get like a flat.
Yeah.
And, like or something. Like I can get a house in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
But this is like cool. I think it's fun. It's like we're
Do you actually meet interesting people?
yeah.
Are they your friends?
Yeah. I mean, well, so this place I'm a little bit new to, and then I have this other one short, like I got tired of.
Yeah.
It was like it was a rich guy's social experiment to like choose 7 people to live together and try to like fight. It was kind of yeah.
What?
It was so crazy, actually. It was so hilarious.
What? How did you even get into that?
Oh my god. It's just like Pandora's box. Like that's like you start like guys like
So weird. Wow. You're like living on some other level plane.
it was really fascinating.
How
Because
did you
there's like
meet-
this
How did you meet this person?
he started a fake school with his money. Like he has money, like mostly from his family, and he used it to start a fake school and made himself a dean. And it's just like it's 7 people. He chooses every year 7 people to live together, and then he makes them fight. And like we're supposed to learn how to deal with his like horrible like ways of making us fight. He's so smart. It's like nobody even realized he was smart. Like I mean, he's like not, but he's like close. He's like.
Did you actually end up fighting with people?
Oh, he induced a lot of people to fight with me. Like, and
What is fighting with you like?
Trying to like create drama, trying to like make social problems for me,
Isn't that stressful?
but I kind of saw it as like very like I got too into it honestly. Like it got really crazy, and it's like the worse it got, the more like into it I got. I was like, oh,
This is
you're
why you're obsessed about governance now.
no, but I was upset that like I came up with this before I started living there. I didn't do too into this for too long. I was like I shouldn't be very long. But
Okay, maybe you should choose 7 people to live with to work on your project.
Yeah, maybe. Or make it into like a reality show, so like a reality show.
I would love to hear what you do. Like, let me know.
Yeah.
That would be so much fun. I think that would work well. Like, just not no conflict.
Yeah, no. Like, yeah, you don't. I mean, unless it's entertaining, being with other people, I don't know. Like,
You want to focus your energy on like
No.
interesting things. Like, like, I think the idea should be that people should be like, yeah, I get like everybody should be in the right headspace to make work on. It's kind of like how Google has like everything that somebody would want in their office, so like the state of the laundry.
oh yeah.
Like create an environment where people are like so happy
Right.
that they're like always inspired to like work. Like not work, but like work on like cool things.
Yeah. I mean, even like, I've done that too. In the Philippines, I set up like hacker houses. People live where they work. Like, and they work together.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That would be nice.
Yeah, it should be like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Philippines.
oh, do it here. No,
I'll do
like,
it
I wanna
here,
do
yeah.
it in London.
Do it in London.
But I did.
I was thinking of moving to Asia recently, but it didn't really work out.
I mean, I didn't. I mean,
It was not worth it.
like, what would you do?
I'm flying to Hong Kong by the end of this month. Yeah, for like 1 weeks. But I was there in June already. I think the more that I'm there, I'm sort of like glad I don't live there.
It's like a different kind of process now.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, keep me updated. I would love to let me know if you hear any cool room ideas for me. I'm interested. Come up with anything cool, but I don't want to live in a house where people like argue. That's too much.
Oh, no, this house is pretty chill. This house is not pretty chill.
Let me know. Send me some stuff.
Yeah.
Send me some stuff that you did too. I want to read.
Sure, absolutely. Very good.
Because we'll be like.
No, I know. I saw it. I worked at it.
It's great. segundo. Hard phase.